Chapter 2967. However, wasn't the nine-tailed emperor already dead? How could he be reborn? Back then, the stone statue of the nine-tailed son of heaven was shattered by the human ancestor using the mortal life cauldron. It was broken and had no chance of being reborn. However, Suyu hesitated again as he thought about Prince Mirrorflower. Mirrorflower Heavenly Prince wasn't torn to pieces yet, but he used his remains as a foundation to prepare for rebirth, and he almost succeeded. If Suyu didn't have the divine monument of the ultimate ruin, which could restrain it, Mirrorflower Heavenly Prince would have been mostly reborn by now. If the Mirrorflower Heavenly Prince could be reborn, why couldn't the nine-tailed Heavenly Prince? However, a large portion of Mirrorflower Heavenly Prince's body remained. What could the nine-tailed Heavenly Prince rely on? Suddenly, Suyu's heart shook, and he took out an emerald green pearl. The bead released a smooth luster, and there was a faint flicker of spiritual light. What was even more strange was that there was an eye on the bead. It was as if this was not an ordinary spatial storage device, but a living eye. It was none other than the nine-jade spiritual pearl that he had not used for a long time. The true form of the nine-jade spiritual pearl was the eye of the nine-tailed emperor. Back then, the other eye that came from Huangfu, he had released the first-generation demon emperor of the demon race. The remaining eyeball came from the remains of the nine-tailed emperor. In terms of purity, this eyeball was clearly superior. The stone statue of the nine-tailed son of heaven has been shattered into pieces, and only this eye has retained its essence, Suyu murmured. If the nine-tailed emperor wanted to be reborn, he would need the help of this eye. If you want to be reborn, you'll have to ask me first, Suyu said calmly, as he put away the nine-jade spiritual pearl. Sukair didn't hear what Suyu was muttering, so she said, one of the other rebirth methods is this kind of womb. At this point, Sukair said with deep hatred, the emperor of the sacred mountain is willing to do anything for himself. He doesn't care about the lives of the other living beings in the great beginning realm. Suyu looked at the womb and narrowed his eyes. Are you trying to say that the fossil inside is actually a part of the nine-tailed emperor's body? Sukair nodded exactly. Back then, the human ancestor shattered the nine-tailed son of heaven, and it no longer had a stone statue body. It could only reassemble its body. This fossil is actually the body that the son of heaven of the holy mountain condensed by absorbing the essence of the nine-star civilization. She clenched her fists and said, I hate the sacred mountain son of heaven for deceiving the common people, saying that the fossil was naturally born by the nine-star civilization. So you finally understood why the holy mountain prohibited the excavation of fossils. As it turned out, the so-called nine-star civilization crystal nucleus was actually the body of the nine-tailed emperor. In that case, the so-called curse on the Blood Mountain was most likely related to the sacred mountain. Among the 10 heavenly sons of the sacred mountain, one of them was proficient in curses. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for such a terrifying curse-shielding fossil to be successfully born. However, it is extremely difficult to successfully nurture a fossil. Most of them fail. Sukair said, even if we exhaust all the essences of a nine-star civilization, we might not be able to produce 10 fossils. Suyu thought for a while and asked, did the abandoned civilizations outside the Xing River also decline because of this? Sukair said, of course. Any civilization had the ability to repair itself, so how could it be completely exhausted by ordinary mining? This is what the Holy Mountain claims to the outside world, saying that it is caused by too many creatures. In fact, this is not the case at all. Everything is a sin created by the Holy Mountain itself. Hearing this, Suyu was suspicious and asked, as far as I know, the nine-tailed emperor was destroyed an era ago, and the abandoned civilizations of the Xing River did not dry up in just one era. At this point, Sukair was also a little confused, and she looked at her master in confusion. She only knew one thing about the past and did not know the other. The holy pirate was silent for a moment, then said, the holy mountain absorbs the essence of various civilizations. Part of it is to restore their bodies, but more importantly, to maintain their own existence. Maintain existence? Su Yu's eyes narrowed. This was the first time he had heard that the existence of the holy mountain's heavenly sons needed to be maintained. What do you mean? Su Yu asked. The holy pirate said slowly, literally, the holy mountain's heavenly sons are not creatures of the great beginning realm. They forcibly came to the great beginning realm and occupied the holy mountain. They were regarded as aliens and rejected by the great beginning realm. In order to resist this repulsive force, the holy mountain's heavenly sons continue to absorb the essence of various civilizations. This is why almost all civilizations are destroyed. Hearing this, Su Yu suddenly understood, and the doubts in his heart were solved. The 8-star civilizations were massacred by the holy mountain every era, and this was probably the reason. Moreover, what is even more frightening is that the 9-star civilization that we are currently in is the only civilization that can bear all of our lives. Once it is destroyed, there will be no place for us to survive. The holy pirate was full of hatred. However, in order to maintain its own existence and regenerate the 9-tailed emperor, the holy mountain's heavenly sons still unscrupulously destroyed the remaining 9-star civilization. The holy pirate looked at the womb, his eyes full of hatred. Therefore, we took the risk to come to the place where the fossil was born, and we did everything we could to successfully kill the fossil in the womb, the holy pirate said. Su Yu's heart skipped a beat. The we she was talking about was obviously not just her and Sukar, but another group of people. The holy pirate did not continue to speak cautiously, lest their existence be revealed. You already understand the matter. What do you want to do? Do it yourself, the holy pirate said. Su Yu stared at the womb, his eyes revealing a thoughtful look. He remembered that he had once seen a small civilization scattered in the vast galaxy, the Mecha civilization. That civilization had completely transcended the world of martial artists and become an extremely ordinary small civilization, somewhat similar to Earth in the past. However, it was much more advanced than Earth. Now that he thought about it, those civilizations should have been created by the Holy Mountain's heavenly sons, right? The purpose was to create more civilizations that were suitable for the survival of martial artists. However, in the era of low martial arts, it was bound to be an era of collapse of martial artists, and only the weak could survive. Therefore, if there were no accidents, the Holy Mountain might carry out a bloodbath of the powerful creatures in the world, leaving only the ordinary creatures similar to the Mecha civilization alive. However, what was the point of doing that? So you could not understand. The Holy Mountain's heavenly sons had consumed the resources of the entire great beginning realm. Even if they created a small civilization like the Mecha civilization, what was the point? Such a civilization would have such shallow spiritual energy that it was almost non-existent, and it could not provide for the Holy Mountain's heavenly sons to continue to maintain their own existence. Forget it. Let's get rid of the womb in front of us first. So you shook his head. The level he stood at was still too low, and there were still many things he did not know. He looked at the womb and could not help but clench the absolute heaven sword. The Holy Pirate Alliance tried to stop him. Wait, break the womb now, unless you don't want to live. Sukai nodded repeatedly. Yes, you saw the danger of the residual liquid in the womb just now. If you touch it even a little, you will die. Chapter 2968. Hearing this, Suyu shook his head. Is there a need to go through so much trouble? He said indifferently, back off. Holy Pirate saw that he couldn't stop them, so he retreated and protected Sukai. Suyu waved his finger, and an origin grade space domain surrounded the three of them. This scene caused Sukai's expression to change, and she looked at Suyu in astonishment. Origin grade space domain? Wasn't this her father's unique skill? But before he could ask, Suyu held the absolute heaven sword in his hand and slashed it at the uterus. Crash! The throbbing uterus was cut open on the spot, and a large amount of green liquid flowed out from it. Wherever it splashed, the place would be corroded, and even the space was no exception. Suyu immediately sheathed his sword and activated the primordial space realm, which condensed into a giant lotus net around them. The residual liquid that splashed over corroded the lotus net, causing it to shake. However, it managed to withstand the corrosion and did not break. The holy pirate heaved a sigh of relief, and the way he looked at Su Yu changed drastically. Don't tell me this is the ancestral technique you stole from the Space Saint clan. The ancestral art of the Space Sacred race could never be stolen away. This was because the ancestral techniques were all passed down within the bloodline, and only the descendants of the bloodline could cultivate them. When a Space Sacred race clansman died, their bodies would be destroyed by the space domain in their bloodline. Not even a hair would be left. In the Space Saint clan, Su Yu's primordial space realm could only be cultivated by the elders. Where did Su Yu get his primordial space realm? But just as she was about to ask for more details, Su Kai screamed, "Mother!" After the uterus ruptured, a slim and graceful figure stood in the same place, dripping wet. She had fair skin, a slim body, and two watery purple crystal eyes on her pretty face. At first glance, she was like a wild elf. Her appearance was 70% similar to Su Kai. Su was also stunned. That was Qin Xianer. The child in the womb was actually Qin Xianer. Mother. Su Kai freed herself from Holy Pirate. She ran toward Qin Xianer. However, just as he took a step forward, Su Yu unsheathed his sword and struck. The cold sword light split the sky and split Qin Xianer into two. Dark red blood flowed out and dyed the ground red. Su Kai was stunned and shouted, "What are you doing? Why did you kill my mother?" Su Yu lowered his head and said in a low voice, "That's not your mother." Her mother had passed away not long after Su Kai had left. What stood there was just a fossil. Moreover, it was a psychic fossil that could peer into people's hearts. It knew where Su Yu's heart was, so it condensed Qin Xianer's shadow. As expected, when Qin Xianer fell to the ground, her body immediately turned into stone, turning into a broken stone statue. Su Kai-er's eyes flashed with astonishment, and she said in a daze, "This is," Holy Pirate expressionlessly said, "This is the self-protection power of the fossil when it senses danger. It will condense into the darkest person or thing in the eyes of the creatures nearby. Then it will control the enemy." As he spoke, the Holy Pirate squinted his eyes and looked at Su Yu. "Su Kai, and you saw the same person. However, this person is Su Kai-er's mother, but who are you to her? Why is she the one in the darkest place in my heart?" The speaker had an ulterior motive, and the listener had an ulterior motive. Su Kai-er's ears twitched, and she cast a suspicious look at Su Yu. "Right? What is the relationship between you and my mother? How could the fossil sense that the darkest person in your heart is my mother?" She rolled her eyes and said with a faint smile, "Could it be that there was an ill-fated relationship between you and my mother that ended without any cause?" She didn't think that her mother had done anything wrong to her father. After all, the black-robed person was a woman. Su Yu slowly put his sword back into its sheath. His tone was indescribably depressed as he said, "Don't joke about your mother. Su Kai didn't know that her mother was no longer in this world. You are a busybody." Su Kai snorted disapprovingly. She was about to continue asking who Su Yu was. All of a sudden, the crushed stones on the ground shook, then shot up into the sky and flew into the sky. In one of the stones, there was a pearl that was emitting a faint light. It carried all the stones and flew into the sky. Seeing this, the Holy Pirate was taken aback. "Oh no, this fossil has been successfully nurtured." Most of the fossils would die in the womb for various reasons. These fossils were usually snatched away by various forces to absorb the remaining power within them. Only a few were lucky enough to be nurtured successfully and go straight to the Holy Mountain. This fossil was one of the few that succeeded. The rubble that was emitting light was the best proof. Now, it was what a rush to the Holy Mountain. Su Yu's eyes narrowed. "I am here, and you want me to let you go back to the Holy Mountain?" He clenched his 5 fingers, and the entire sky above the Blood Mountain darkened. A pitch-black giant palm of space descended from the sky and slammed down fiercely. Bang! Most of the crushed stones were slammed down, and only the shimmering rubble was still stubbornly rushing upwards. Humph! Su Yu pressed his palm down, and the pitch-black demonic palm clenched fiercely. It pinched the shimmering rubble and pressed it down quickly. Even so, the rubble was still resisting, trying to break free from Su Yu's control and fly to the holy mountain. Su Yu walked over and stepped on it. He said lightly, "Do you want to be a part of the body of the nine-tailed emperor? You'll have to ask me first." As he spoke, Su Yu took out the 9-jade spiritual pearl and activated it. All of a sudden, the rubble floated up uncontrollably and was automatically absorbed into the 9-jade spiritual pearl. As the only remaining core of the nine-tailed emperor's body, the 9-jade spiritual pearl naturally had the ability to control other parts. Unfortunately, this 9-jade spiritual pearl had been refined by Su Yu for many years and had long been under Su Yu's control. Then, he collected the remaining rubble one by one, without missing a single one. Seeing this, the holy pirate was stunned. Is it over just like that? The holy pirate remembered that every time he encountered a successfully nurtured fossil, there would be an earth-shattering battle, and countless deaths and injuries would occur. Even the lightest battle caused serious injuries to several great saints. In serious cases, there were even several deaths. Therefore, a successfully nurtured fossil would never allow itself to be captured alive. It would often take extreme measures at the last minute, such as self-destruction. The consequences of that were extremely serious. However, he did not expect Su Yu to use an emerald green bead to successfully retrieve the fossil. It was unbelievable. "This pearl of yours seems a little special," the holy pirate said, squinting. This man was full of secrets, and he couldn't see through him at all. Su Yu put away the pearl expressionlessly, looked at the empty blood mountain, and said, "Let's get out of here first and get rid of the curse." Although the fossil had been recovered, it didn't mean they were safe. The curse was still there. The holy pirate thought about it and said, "Come with me. We have a way to deal with the curse." Since she had rushed over, she was certainly prepared. Chapter 2969. The holy pirate flew upward, and Su Yu immediately followed him. However, just as he arrived above the blood mountain, he heard a huge commotion. It turned out that when the fragments flew into the sky, many experts mistakenly thought that a fossil had appeared and came to snatch it. Coincidentally, Su Yu and the other two came face to face. "You're still alive?" A great saint remembered Su Yu and couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. There were very few people in the world who were still alive after entering deep into the blood mountain. Another great sage rushed over and discovered the situation at the bottom of the blood mountain and exclaimed, "Not good, the fossils are all gone." All of a sudden, many pairs of eyes locked on Su Yu, the holy pirate, and Su Kair. "Hand over the fossil." A group of people silently surrounded the three of them. To them, fossilization had the hope of transcending mortality and entering holiness. How could they give up just like that? The holy thief frowned slightly. There were 5 or 6 great saints in front of them. How could they be a match for them? However, holy thief was fearless. He snorted coldly and said, "A bunch of ignorant fools. If you want the fossil, you have to ask for our permission first." With a flip of her palm, a spinning flame token appeared in her palm. At the center of the token, a yin-yang fish eye appeared as it rotated like a Taiji symbol. The Heaven and Earth Alliance? The pupils of several great sages shrank, and there was deep fear in their eyes. Which one of them wasn't a peerless powerhouse that guarded a region? However, in front of this token, all of them revealed fearful expressions. The weight of Heaven and Earth Alliance was obvious. "If you know, then step back," Holy Pirate coldly said as he put away the token. Sky and Earth Alliance is handling matters. If a normal faction does not want to get into trouble, it is best for them to leave. The 6 great sages present looked at each other and reluctantly retreated with gritted teeth. So he was surprised. Heaven and Earth Alliance? What kind of power was this? Not only was it unheard of, but it was also so powerful. Before he came to the 9-star civilization, he had read many books about the 9-star civilization, including the division of many forces, so he had some understanding. However, this so-called Heaven and Earth Alliance definitely did not exist in any ancient records. However, it was also well known and feared by many great figures of the nine-star civilizations. It was truly strange. However, it was naturally a good thing that he could use the mighty name of Heaven and Earth Alliance to temporarily leave this place. Otherwise, with so many great sages, it would be very troublesome. Let's go. Holy Pirate led the two of them through the encirclement of many elites. However, the moment they were about to leave the Blood Mountain, the holy thief's eyes flashed, and he shouted anxiously, "Be careful!" A green whirlwind revolved around her body, protecting Su Yu, Su Kai-er, and herself within it. Then, she fled at an astonishing speed. Bang! But after a few steps, a dragon, and a Yu, the dragon pirate, the Su Yu, and the sound of the bell that shook the soul swept across the area. The great saints nearby were caught off guard. They couldn't help but cover their ears in pain. Even the saint out that the holy Bin the saint was. Even though Holy Pirate was on guard, the green whirlwind around him was immediately shaken away. The Su Yu the said him, "That, you that, with to him, you the, got out you that, you were, and, you saint, pirate, Su, you was, Bin, to Su, you." At the same time, he separated a large portion of his soul domain to protect Su Kai-er. Compared to him, Su Kai-er was too weak. She couldn't even withstand a single soul attack from the Golden Bell. Hence, Su Yu had to bear the brunt of the attack. He groaned and spat out a mouthful of blood. This was because Holy Pirate had used the green whirlwind to cancel out some of the attacks. If he had attacked directly, it would not have been as simple as spitting out blood. Emo, soul calming bell. Holy Pirate's eyes were solemn. He said in a deep voice, "Is it one of the 10 treasures of the famous Sword Holy tribe?" When the great saints in the vicinity noticed the existence of the bell, their faces flickered. The more tactful ones all left this place, aware that something bad was about to happen. As for those who didn't know what was good for them, they all silently observed their surroundings. Since the Yimo Soul Calming Bell had appeared, it meant that a member of the Sword's sacred clan was nearby. "Haha, looks like there are still people who remember our Sacred Sword clan," a hoarse voice said. At the foot of the Bloody Mountain, in a hidden forest, 2 elders in long black robes walked out. Seeing them, Su Yu immediately recognized them. They were the 2 who ranked slightly lower among the 5 great saints of the Sacred Sword clan. In the past, when he was chased by the Sacred Sword clan, Su Yu had no choice but to break into a deep pit. He had experienced many dangers before he managed to escape. Seeing the 2 great saints of the Sacred Sword clan again, he naturally didn't have a good expression. Moreover, if Su Yu's guess was correct, the 2 hidden great saints that Su Yu had sensed before were most likely them. The other elders said calmly, "I thought that after our Sacred Sword clan suffered an accident, the world had forgotten about us. It's rare that they still recognize us." Holy Pirate's heart was heavy. The Heaven and Earth Alliance could deter most of the great saints, but the Sacred Sword clan was an exception. The great saints of the Sacred Sword clan not only had powerful cultivation, but they also possessed the most advanced Taoist artifacts of the 9-star civilizations. Their overall strength was a level higher than that of their peers, and they were very difficult to deal with. The power of the Emo Soul Calming Bell just now was the best proof. Holy Pirate cupped his fists and said, "It turns out that you are a friend of the Sacred Sword clan. How could I not know you? It would be best if they could resolve this peacefully. Using force was the last resort. Since you know me, why don't you hand over the fossil and get out of here?" The black-veiled elder said bluntly. Holy Pirate was in a dilemma. The recovered fossil was not an ordinary thing. If it was not properly kept, it could fly to the Holy Mountain. If that happened, the rebirth of the 9-tailed Heavenly Emperor would be further advanced. Now, there were only 8 Heavenly Emperors left, and they were still oppressing many creatures of the absolute beginning realm. If there was one more Heavenly Emperor, it would be difficult to resist them. Why are you talking nonsense with him? Just kill him. The other elder did not have the slightest bit of patience. Seeing the hesitation on Holy Pirate's face, he was ready to activate the EMO soul calming bell. Holy Pirate's pupils shrank. How could she withstand the second attack of the EMO soul calming bell? However, just as the other party was about to activate it, Suyu suddenly displayed the space domain and instantly teleported the EMO soul calming bell in front of him. Seeing this, the two elders did not panic. Instead, there was a hint of mockery in their eyes. If the Taoist artifacts of the Sacred Sword clan were so easily taken away, our clan would have been destroyed long ago. As he spoke, one of the elders displayed a magic art on the spot and activated the EMO soul calming bell from a distance. However, the moment before he displayed it, Suyu took out a dark green ball. This was the exquisite ball given to him by the Life Dominator. Chapter 2970. As soon as Suyu activated it, an emerald light emerged from the exquisite ball and enveloped the EMO soul calming bell. The blood imprints that had been refined by the Sword Saint clan for many years were all extracted on the spot. The elder's chest tightened, and he opened his mouth to spit out a mouthful of blood. He looked horrified. How could one of the Life Saint clan's treasures be in your hands? Suyu smiled faintly. How do you think I will answer you? With a flick of his finger, a drop of blood flew out and quickly integrated into the EMO soul calming bell through the exquisite ball. The other old man from the Sword Saint clan was enraged when he saw this scene. Stop! That was one of the great treasures of the Sword Saint clan. How could it fall into the hands of others? The status of the Sword Saint clan was not as good as it used to be. If one of the treasures of the clan were taken away on the spot, it would only attract more covetous eyes. In the blink of an eye, this person took out a jet-black iron ring and immediately activated it. An ape's roar came from within the black iron ring. The Holy Pirate's pupils shrank again. She pulled Su Kai back and exclaimed, "Is the Sword Saint clan crazy? How could they bring out two treasures of the clan? They even brought out the third-ranked black ape slave ring." If the power of the EMO soul calming bell was infinite, the black ape slave ring was terrifying. If it was used by a great saint, it was enough to compete with a top great saint. Its power was unimaginable. It's good that you know. Accept your death with peace of mind. Crash! Inside the black iron ring, a black light suddenly appeared. A huge mass of black light emerged from the iron ring and condensed into a pitch-black ape the size of a mountain. The black ape wore a golden crown on its head and was covered in silver-white armor. Its right foot was covered with a black iron ring. The elder silently recited a spell, and the black iron ring gradually turned red, causing the black ape to howl in pain and beat its chest. Kill him. The elder pointed at Suyu coldly and ordered the black ape to kill. The black ape lowered its head, and its scarlet eyes immediately stared at Suyu. The moment it stared at him, Suyu felt a chill on his back, and he felt a sense of crisis. Holy Pirate hurriedly said, "Be careful. That black ape was the black ape ancestor of the sacred tribe that was ranked third in the past. After he was replaced by the sword sacred tribe, the black ape ancestor's consciousness was destroyed, and he was refined into the sword's sacred tribe's guardian divine beast. In a 9-star civilization where the competition was fierce, there was a possibility that the Saint clan would perish. The Black Ape Divine clan was able to be ranked third all those years ago, so their strength was unimaginably terrifying. Even though their consciousness had been obliterated and their strength had fallen greatly, how much could they have fallen? Roar! The black ape stomped down, and the scene was like the sky was collapsing. Suyu's heart skipped a beat. He grabbed the EMO soul calming bell that he had yet to refine and retreated. Just as he was about to retreat, his huge feet stepped on a mountain of blood. In the end, with a rumble, the bloody mountain was razed to the ground on the spot, leaving behind a huge footprint that was tens of thousands of feet deep. Suyu had just dodged the attack when a strong stench and scorching heat surged toward him. Raising his head, he saw that the black ape had spat out a ball of black flames from its nostrils. Suyu unleashed a space primordial realm and engulfed all the flames with space collapse. Unexpectedly, The black flames even burned through the space collapse and headed straight for Suyu. Fortunately, Suyu had already dodged it again. However, the Black Ape's combat power was extremely strong. Before the two attacks had even landed, it had already prepared itself and pulled out the huge chain from its waist, lashing it down from above. Bang! Suyu only saw a blurry residual shadow before he was hit by the chain. His body was flung into the sky like a meteor. At this moment, Suyu felt as if his whole body was about to explode, and he was in severe pain everywhere. However, he had no time to care about the pain. His rich combat experience told Suyu that the Black Ape's second attack would appear immediately. Sure enough, another blurry residual shadow attacked. Suyu was prepared and dodged to the side. The residual shadow of the chain brushed past the space 1,000 feet behind Suyu and smashed down, causing the space to explode. Suyu was blown away on the spot, and there was a metallic taste in his throat again. He was annoyed. If he had not been focused on refining the EMO soul calming bell, he would not have been in such a sorry state. Roar! The two chains did not work, and the Black Ape lashed out with the chain again. The holy thief gritted her silver teeth and rushed out instantly. She condensed a sharp ancestral technique between her fingers and bombarded the back of the Black Ape. She muttered self-mockingly, "What kind of world is this? I actually want to help the people who hurt me?" However, when the ancestral technique attacked the back of the Black Ape, there was only a crisp sound of collision. It turned out that the silver-white armor of the Black Ape was the #1 treasure of the Black Ape Holy Clan. It had been improved and tempered by the Sword Holy Clan for many years, so its hardness was incomparable. Not to mention the Holy Thief, even Huang Dasheng of the Sword Holy Clan, with the strongest attack weapon of the Sword Holy Clan, could not break the silver-white armor. After being attacked, the Black Ape lashed out at Suyu with a chain and immediately turned to attack the Holy Thief. The Holy Thief was best at movement techniques. Her beautiful eyes shrank, and she resisted at an amazing speed. Suyu could not avoid it directly, but she could avoid it in time. However, the good times did not last long. As soon as she dodged the chain, the fist of the Black Ape, which had been waiting for a long time, hit the Holy Thief hard. If this punch landed, the weak body of the Holy Thief would be turned into minced meat. At this critical moment, the Holy Thief drew out two ancestral techniques. One of them was the Buddhist protective technique from before, and the other was a protective ancestral technique that was not weak. As a result, the protective ancestral technique on the surface was instantly crushed by the fist. As for the protective golden light that was close to the body, after a moment of stalemate, it finally shattered with a cracking sound. The Holy Thief was sent flying by the fist of the Black Ape. Fortunately, there were two defenses which greatly weakened the attack, so the Holy Thief did not die. However, he could only stay alive. His soul was severely impacted, and it was scattered. His body was on the verge of collapse. "Master, Sukai!" Immediately rushed forward and hugged him. Her face was full of heartache. Unexpectedly, the ferocious nature of the Black Ape had been unleashed. Once he started killing, he would kill to the end. The chain in the palm of his hand was raised, and he swung it at the weak Holy Thief and Sukai. This was enough to turn the two of them into dust. At this critical moment, Suyu finally succeeded in refining the EMO soul calming bell. Without saying a word, he activated the bell. Buzz! With a loud noise, the horrible soul attack went straight into the soul of the Black Ape. Originally, the soul of the Black Ape had been injured by the Sword Saint clan, so it was not strong. How could it withstand a violent soul attack? The hand that he pulled out immediately trembled, and the chain fell out of his hand. He held his head and screamed. Although the force of the chain had weakened, it still went straight towards Sukai. Suyu's face changed dramatically when he saw this. Xian had already died. Did he want Kai to go too? If that was the case, how could he have the face to see Xian again? Chapter 2971. Without any hesitation, Suyu rushed over instinctively and forcefully blocked the chain with his own body. With the chain in front of him, Suyu used several ancestral techniques in succession to condense a strong defense around him. However, these defenses were no better than paper in front of the black ape's chain. Boom! The ancestral technique's defenses were shattered on the spot, and the chain bombarded Su Yu's body almost without any hindrance. He tried to use his hands to hold on to the chain. However, the chain was too frightening. It crushed Su Yu's arms and whipped him in the chest. Su Yu had a premonition of great danger. If he stepped back now, he might have a chance of survival. However, if he stepped back, what would happen to Su Kai? Get lost. Su Yu growled. He could not help but release all 8 domains, which merged into an 8-colored ring. Crack! The ring was struck by the chain, and a huge crack immediately appeared. Su Yu tried his best to repair the domains. However, the domains were broken in an instant, and the speed of repair could not keep up. After 2 breaths' time, the 8 prime level domains finally could not hold on any longer and shattered with a loud bang. However, after a long time, the power of the chain had weakened by more than half. When it bombarded Su Yu's chest, it did not immediately turn him into a bloody pulp. Su Yu clenched his teeth and pressed his feet against the ground. He would not allow the chain to pass through him and hurt Su Kai-er. That was the only bloodline of him and Sien-er. Traces of blood were forced backward by the chain, drenching Su Kai-er. Looking at Su Yu, who had used his body and his life to protect her, Su Kai-er was stunned, and her mind went blank. If she had not seen the woman's figure under the black robe when Su Yu's clothes were torn, she might have really thought that it was her biological father. After a while, the power of the chain became weaker and weaker, and finally, it calmed down. Su Yu's body was badly mutilated, and he did not look like a human. He had lost both arms, and his chest had been ground to the point where only bones were left. Fortunately, this was the body of Prince Mirrorflower, which was extremely hard. If it was Su Yu's own body, it would have been smashed to pieces. Whoosh! As the chain fell to the ground, Su Yu fell to the ground powerlessly. He did not even have the strength to move. He had used up all of his strength just now to block the chains, and now, any random master of the Heaven Law might be able to kill him. What was worse was that the black ape had no intention of stopping after being attacked by Mo's soul-calming bell. Instead, it became more and more irritable. He clutched his head and roared crazily, attacking indiscriminately. Even the 2 great saints of the Sword-Sacred clan were affected, and their bodies trembled. Evil creature, be quiet. The old man controlling the black ape slave ring tried to subdue the black ape that had gone out of control. However, the black ape's soul was attacked, and its leg was injured by the slave ring, so it became even more frenzied. Puff! It opened its mouth and spat out purple flames in all directions, covering an area of tens of thousands of miles. Even the 2 elders from the Sword-Sacred clan were no exception. Damn it! Retreat one after another. The black ape is temporarily out of control, said the old man. But my EMO soul-suppressing bell. Another elder hesitated. Who cares about the bell? Now the black ape is only in its first form. If it reaches its second form, everyone in the world will be destroyed. The old man who controlled the black ape slave ring knew the horror of the black ape the best. The other old man could only nod and flee with the other old man. They could only wait for the black ape to vent its anger before taking it back. Many strong men had fled, so how could Su Yu and the others dare to stay? Aunt Ryu, master. Su Kai struggled to help the 2 of them up at the same time. Her small face was full of difficulty. The Saint Thief was fine, but Su Yu had the body of the Emperor. In the past, the heart of Emperor Mirrorflower could easily crush a 5-star civilization. One could imagine how heavy it was. Su Kai-er's cultivation was shallow, so it was difficult for her to help them up. I'm fine. Su Yu struggled to stand up. Looking at the crazy black ape, he said, retreat first. This black ape is still a great threat. He could feel the extreme horror of this black ape. Roar. However, just as they were about to leave, the black ape suddenly stared at Su Yu. Although it had fallen into madness, it still did not forget the order given to it by the Sword Saint clan. In addition, Su Yu had activated the EMO soul calming bell, which caused damage to its soul, so it hated Su Yu even more. It squatted down strangely, raised its fists high, and slammed them down toward the ground. "Get out of the way." So you pushed Su Kai, and the Saint Thief away. The black ape was obviously coming for him. Bang! Bang! All of a sudden, the ground under Su Yu's feet exploded. A shocking destructive force tore the earth apart and leaped out from under his feet. It looked like it was going to kill Su Yu, whose body had been seriously injured on the spot. At this critical moment, Su Yu sacrificed the absolute heaven sword. His hands had been crippled and had not yet recovered. He bit the hilt of the absolute heaven sword and pulled it out. He had a weak body and could not fully display the power of the absolute heaven sword, but now he could not care so much. "Get lost." So you swept his eyes around. The absolute heaven sword erupted with the power of darkness and destruction, devouring everything around it. Even the power erupting from the ground was forcibly erased by the absolute heaven sword, leaving nothing behind. Not only that, but the remaining power swept towards the black ape. In the frenzied black ape's blood-red eyes, a touch of fear appeared for the first time, and it hurriedly retreated. Not only that, but it also grabbed its own chain and waved it repeatedly, trying to destroy the sword energy of the absolute heaven sword. However, what made the black ape even more terrified was that the chain was torn apart by the sword energy in the process of whipping. In the end, the sword energy swept through the body of the black ape, and the incomparably hard silver-white armor on its body immediately showed dense cracks like a spider web. Moreover, the cracks were increasing at an alarming rate. After a while, only a click was heard, and the armor on its body exploded, revealing a hairless, fleshy red body. That was the true face of the black ape. Even the armor was broken by the sword energy, let alone the body of the black ape. As long as the sword energy swept through it, it would be split into two. At this critical moment, the black ape felt a great crisis and suddenly roared towards the sky. The huge black ape's body turned into a black light and soared into the sky. Creak! The sword energy swept through and cut through the black light, causing a painful roar to come from within the black light. That roar was no longer that of an ape, but a dragon. Roar! With a violent dragon roar, the black light dissipated, revealing a giant black dragon circling in the air. The giant dragon's eyes were scarlet, retaining the ferocity of the black ape, but the dangerous aura it exuded was stronger than before. What was slightly shocking was that the dragon's tail had been neatly cut off. The sword energy of the absolute heaven sword had still injured it. Chapter 2972. Having narrowly escaped, the black ape was greatly frightened and turned to flee into the distance. Su Yu held the absolute heaven sword and forced himself to stand. But he had already been seriously injured, and now he had forced himself to use the absolute heaven sword, completely exhausting all his strength. How could he still persist? Before the black ape could fly far, he could no longer hold on and fell to the ground. At this moment, he did not even have the strength to move his fingers. The black ape was keenly aware of the situation and turned back again. Its eyes looked at the motionless absolute heaven sword lying on the ground, and it finally understood that Su Yu's previous attack was a bluff. In fact, it was not a bluff. It was the strongest attack that Su Yu could use. Otherwise, if he had used all his strength, the black ape would not have been able to escape the absolute heaven sword attack. It would have been cut in half and completely dead. The black ape's anger rose again. With a roar, it turned and rushed back, bringing with it the winds and clouds. It stretched out a huge black dragon claw and viciously pinched Su Yu. In its black ape form, it was already extremely powerful. Now that it had transformed into its second form, its strength had increased by more than 10 times. Once caught, even the body of an emperor would be turned into minced meat in an instant. Looking at the approaching dragon claw, Su Yu smiled bitterly in his heart. He had not died in the face of a great disaster, but at the hands of a black ape that could transform. Fate really made fools of people. However, to kill him, the black ape would have to die with him. He still had the Tao Tai's eye, which had always existed between his brows, but it could no longer be used. Otherwise, if it were to absorb it again, it would grow to the point where it could not be sealed. At that time, nothing in the world could stop the Tao Tai's eye. But just as Suyu was about to use it, his eyes suddenly narrowed. He faintly felt a familiar fluctuation. The air of heaven and earth suddenly became turbulent, and the space within a radius of trillions of miles shattered. Strange beams of light intertwined between heaven and earth, as if they were cutting the world into countless pieces. The black ape looked up, and its eyes were once again filled with fear. It even forgot about Suyu, who was close at hand, and turned to flee. Its speed of escape was several times faster than before. Moreover, the black ape let out a roar that sounded like it was begging for mercy, which was completely different from its previous ferocious state. However, the gigantic net still continued to descend mercilessly, piercing through the black ape's body as it continued to descend toward the ground. Unfortunately, Suyu was also enveloped by the giant net and was about to be penetrated by it. However, at this critical moment, a figure suddenly appeared in a flash. He was dressed in a simple green robe, and his beard was unkempt. It seemed like he hadn't taken care of his appearance at all. In his hand, he was holding an object that Suyu was extremely familiar with, the scythe of 10,000 tribulations. The green-robed figure raised the 10,000 tribulations scythe and slashed at the sky. The huge net that covered the sky returned to the 10,000 tribulations scythe. The figure lowered his head and flashed an apologetic smile at Suyu. "I'm sorry for leaving without saying goodbye. I hope I didn't come back too late." He was none other than Mo Hung, who had left with the scythe of 10,000 tribulations. Before Suyu came to the Blood Mountain, he had once sensed the aura of the great sickle of 10,000 calamity. However, Mo Hung had used some special secret techniques to hide the great sickle of 10,000 calamity, so he could no longer find it. Who would have thought that Mo Hung would appear at the final juncture? Looking up again, the speed of the black ape giant dragon, which had been penetrated by the giant net, rapidly slowed down. In the end, it floated motionlessly in the sky. Just as the crowd was wondering if the black ape giant dragon was still alive, the body of the black ape giant dragon turned into pieces of flesh and fell to the ground. The black ape giant dragon was sliced into pieces without the slightest bit of resistance. It cannot be more dead. It was hard to imagine that this was the invincible black ape that had suppressed everything in its path. This was the old ancestor of the black ape holy tribe. To think that he had been killed so mysteriously. Suyu heaved a sigh of relief. He looked at Mo Hung again. "I thought I had trusted the wrong person. It looks like I did not." Suyu had always believed in his eyes. He had never misjudged a person. Now, it looked like that was indeed the case. If Mo Hung had coveted the great sickle of 10,000 calamity, he would never have saved Suyu. Wouldn't it have been better to let Suyu be killed by the black ape giant dragon? That way, the great sickle of 10,000 calamity would belong to him forever. Mo Hung grabbed Suyu's arm and pulled him up from the ground. He then imbued Suyu with his powerful ancient sage energy to repair his body and replenish his energy. After a short while, Suyu's physical strength had mostly recovered, and the injuries on his body had mostly healed as well. "Many thanks," Suyu said. Without hesitation, Mo Hung stuffed the great sickle of 10,000 calamity into Suyu's chest. Return it to its rightful owner. With the great calamity sickle in his arms, Suyu clearly felt that it had become much heavier. He looked down and saw that the 10,000 calamity scythe had been reborn. Before the 10,000 calamity scythe was fully unleashed, it was as inconspicuous as an ordinary scythe. But now, its usual form was a pale, white bone handle and 10 golden heads. This was the ultimate form of the 10,000 calamity scythe. Mo Hung placed his hands behind his back and said, "If your chaotic energy is powerful enough and you've obtained the great scythe of 10,000 calamities recognition, you might be able to activate its 11th head." Suyu remembered that Mo Hung had once said that the full power of the great sickle of 10,000 calamity did not just consist of 10 heads. There was still the 11th head. That head was the real world that the Taotai ancestor had formed with the help of the great beginning realm. Imagine how terrifying the power would be if the entire real world was used to crush the enemy. Moreover, even without activating the 11th head, the power of the modified Great Sickle of 10,000 Calamity could not be underestimated. For example, the black ape giant dragon had been killed in a single blow. The power of that blow was equivalent to half the power of the Absolute Heaven Sword. Most importantly, the Absolute Heaven Sword consumed a great deal of Su Yu's strength. It was difficult to activate it a second time after using it once. But the Great Sickle of 10,000 Calamity was different. He could activate it 10 times in a row if he wanted to. "I will remember your kindness," Su Yu said gratefully. He then asked in surprise, "But why did you leave without saying goodbye back then?" Mo Hung did not even leave a message for him. Hearing that, Mo Hang's eyes were filled with a cold gleam. "Isn't it because of the sword's sacred tribe? When you were fighting Guy Tianma, I sensed the arrival of the sword's sacred tribe. In order not to implicate you, I had to leave first," Mo Hung said. At that time, Su Yu was carrying the Absolute Heaven Sword. If the sword sacred tribe had discovered Su Yu's existence, Su Yu would have fallen into an extremely dangerous situation. Therefore, Mo Hung did not even dare to send a message to Su Yu, lest he be discovered by the people of the sword sacred tribe. For the past 6 months, he had been hiding from place to place while re-refining the Great Sickle of 10,000 Calamity. His hard work paid off. With the help of the skyrocketing path energy near the Blood Mountain, he finally succeeded in refining the Great Sickle of 10,000 Calamity. Chapter 2973. It was an emergency that day, and I couldn't contact you. I'm very sorry, Mo Hung said apologetically. After Su Yu heard the reason, he said, "I didn't do it on purpose, so why do you need to apologize?" Grasping the great scythe of 10,000 Calamity, Su Yu looked at the 2 great sages of the Sword Saint tribe who were hiding far ahead. Isn't the most urgent task to kill these 2 people first? It was all thanks to the 2 of them that his daughter was almost annihilated. He could ignore the injuries he received from the famed Sword Sacred clan, but not his daughter. "All right, let's go over now and kill them all." Mo Hung had been chased by the 2 for a long time and had long since suppressed a bellyful of anger. Now, it was finally their turn to counterattack. How could they not be happy? If I go there now, won't I be giving them a chance to escape? Su Yu's eyes shone with a shrewd light. They are both vigilant people, and they will flee once they encounter danger. If the great saints chose to flee instead of fighting, Su Yu had no good way of keeping them here. So, either we don't attack, or if we attack, we must kill them with a single strike, Su Yu said. Mo Hung deeply agreed. Based on his many years of understanding of the famed Sword Sacred clan, these great sages were more cunning than anyone else. Previously, the Absolute Heaven Sword had gone out of control and wiped out the Sword Sacred clan. Most of the clan members had perished in the disaster, and only the 5 great sages were safe and sound. "What do you plan to do?" Mo Hung looked around and said, "You plan to play dead?" Su Yu chuckled, shook his head, and said, "I'm not pretending to be dead. Instead, I'm making them come here even though they know that I'm not dead." Mo Hung did not understand. Su Yu held the Absolute Heaven Sword in his hand and sheathed it once again. Then he stabbed it into the ground and said, "The human heart can never escape greed." Even someone as calm and collected as Su Yu had to take the risk and barge into the Blood Mountain to retrieve the Absolute Heaven Sword. If that was the case for him, then the 2 ancestors of the Sword Sacred clan who were obsessed with the ultimate Sky Sword were even more so. However, before that, Su Yu's body shook with the Taoist energy. His body, which had just recovered, was badly mutilated again. He looked like he was seriously injured. This is," Mo Hung said in surprise. It wasn't easy for him to recover from his injuries, so why did he have to mutilate his body again? "If we don't do this, they will be afraid of us," Su Yu said. The rest of the light swept across and caught a glimpse of the black ape dragon's body. It was one of its dragon legs. There was also a jet black ring on top of it. This item was a weapon used to control the black ape. If used properly, it could be used to control other things. With a wave of his hand, the black ape slave ring flew into Su Yu's palm. With the help of the exquisite ball, wiping away the blood essence on it was a piece of cake. Then he injected a drop of his own blood essence into it. All he needed was time to brew it, and he would be able to refine it successfully. After putting away the black ape slave ring and the Yimo soul calming bell, Su Yu lay on the ground, his breathing weak. And Mo Hong smiled knowingly and immediately left. The smoke gradually dissipated, and the experts who were surprised by the peace of the place rushed over. The two great sages of the famed Sword Sacred clan were incredibly strong, but they didn't dare to take the lead. Instead, they followed behind a group of ordinary great sages. When he realized that they were not in danger, he finally came out. "All of you, get out of the way. This place is under the control of the famed Sword Sacred clan. Those who are not involved should immediately retreat within 100,000 feet. Otherwise, you will be regarded as an enemy of the famed Sword Sacred clan." The two elders were imposing. With the four words, famed Sword Sacred clan, the great sages who were trying to take advantage of the situation tactfully retreated, not daring to come any closer. Thus, the two great sages joined forces and came to the battlefield. Looking at the black ape dragon that had been torn to pieces, the elder in charge of the black ape slave ring lamented, "It died just like that." He searched back and forth among the rocks, trying to find the black ape slave ring. The other elder looked around for his Yimo soul calming bell. In the end, he didn't find the bell, but in a corner he found Su Yu, who was hiding under a tree and on the verge of death. What made his pupils shrink even more was that a ferocious sword was stuck in the ground. The absolute heaven sword? The elder cried out in surprise, unable to believe his eyes. Wasn't the absolute heaven sword obtained by Prince Xiaoyao's clone, and then the clone was injured by the disastrous fire? Since then, the absolute heaven sword had disappeared without a trace. Why was it in the hands of this person? Looking at the sword, the elder's eyes were full of greed. Compared to the absolute heaven sword, a mere Yimo soul calming bell was nothing. He wanted to take it for himself, but unfortunately, the exclamation just now had attracted the attention of another comrade. Is it really the absolute heaven sword? With a swoosh, the companion not only rushed over, but also rushed towards the absolute heaven sword. "What are you doing?" The elder in charge of the Yimo soul calming bell immediately shouted and chased after him. The two of them had a tacit understanding that they both wanted to snatch the absolute heaven sword. The situation of the famed Sword Sacred clan was different from the past. In the past, the famed Sword Sacred clan relied on its illustrious reputation to be respected wherever it went. Now it was different. The famed Sword Sacred clan was greatly weakened, and many forces were eyeing it, trying to disintegrate it. Not long ago, when a great sage of the clan went out to visit a friendly force, he was ambushed by an unknown force and almost died. This incident alerted the rest of the great sages. This was also the reason why they always carried the clan's precious treasure whenever they went out, for self-defense. Now that the absolute heaven sword was in front of them, why didn't they hold it in their hands? Anyway, the emperors had temporarily forgotten about the absolute heaven sword and did not ask for it again. If it fell into their hands, they would hold it for a while. Even if the emperors asked for it later, they would still be rewarded by them. Seeing that he could not catch up with the old man with the black ape slave ring, the latter could not help but look annoyed. "I found it first." "So what if you found it first?" "The absolute heaven sword is the best sword in the world, and it belongs to those who are capable. I am stronger than you, so naturally I should hold it," the old man with the black ape slave ring said disapprovingly. In a flash, he appeared in front of Su Yu and grabbed the absolute heaven sword. The old man with the Yimo soul calming bell was furious. "Shameless! Who said you were stronger than me? Let go of me!" The old man opened his mouth and spat out an ancestral technique remnant in the air. It was a remnant unique to the famed Sword Sacred clan, the ancestral sword technique. Once performed, all the swords in the world had to obey the command. Sure enough, as soon as the remnant came out, The absolute heaven sword broke through the ground and flew toward the old man with the Yemo soul calming bell. The old man with the black ape slave ring grabbed nothing but air. He could not help but feel anxious. Are you the only one who knows how to perform ancestral techniques? His right hand moved quickly, and a more solid ancestral technique floated in front of him. The absolute heaven sword that flew toward the old man with the Yemo soul calming bell immediately turned around and flew back to the ladder. The old man was furious. He stepped forward and grabbed the scabbard of the absolute heaven sword, saying, "Fourth brother, you should save some face. The absolute heaven sword is mine." Chapter 2974. The ladder was enraged. "Fourth brother, you're crazy. You're actually killing each other." "Humph, don't blame me for being merciless since you stole my stuff." The fourth brother snorted coldly. The fifth brother was angry and anxious. In terms of strength, he was indeed slightly inferior to the fourth brother. He was extremely angry because the fifth brother had been together for many years and had always been united. But today, for a sword, the fourth brother actually turned against him and attacked him. "Do you think I'm afraid of you?" The fifth brother opened his mouth and an emerald fan flew out. He held the fan handle and waved it fiercely. A strong wind that could topple the mountains and overturn the seas swept through heaven and earth. The corpses of the black ape and giant dragon on the ground were all blown away. The soil on the ground was even lifted up by 3 feet, revealing the bare stone layer. The domain that the fourth brother released was immediately blown away by the strong wind. The fourth brother himself was also blown away. He was in a sorry state, and the anger on his face became even more intense. "You're serious? Fine, then don't blame me." He stretched out all 10 of his fingers, and black steel needles shot out from his fingers. The steel needles grew in the wind and turned into antique longswords. The demonic domain sword formation? The fourth brother, you actually secretly took out the clan's 5th-ranked treasure? The fifth brother said in shock. The fourth brother sneered. Didn't you also secretly take out the 9th-ranked Cosmos fan? It turned out that the 2 of them had secretly taken 1 more clan treasure, just in case. In the end, they did not guard against it, and instead guarded against their own companions. The fifth brother's face was ashen. "Fine, let's see who wins." The 2 of them each held the clan's treasures and fought each other on the spot for the absolute heaven sword. For a moment, the sky and earth darkened. The sky collapsed, and the earth collapsed. Everything within a radius of 10,000 miles was reduced to ruins. The fierce battle lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. Finally, the 2 of them gradually lost their strength. The fifth brother's strength was slightly weaker. In a moment of carelessness, an ancient sword pierced through his abdomen. The ancient sword even injured the fifth brother's soul, causing him to lie on the ground in unbearable pain. The fourth brother immediately caught up and snatched the absolute heaven sword from his hands. He finally smiled. "Ha, the absolute heaven sword actually fell into my hand one day." In the past, he had witnessed with his own eyes how the sword had slaughtered 7 or 8 great saints. Holding the sword in his hand, Number 4 had a strong urge to take this sword with him and travel to the ends of the earth. With this sword, where in the world couldn't he go? Bang! But all of a sudden, the absolute heaven sword's scabbard flashed with an explosive thunderbolt. With the absolute heaven sword as the center, the lightning exploded into a ball of lightning. The fourth brother was caught off guard and was injured by the thunderstorm on the spot. His body was char black and his flesh was mangled. He was on the verge of death. The heavily injured fifth brother crawled up ferociously. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said with difficulty, "You think you're qualified to compete with me?" The heavily injured fourth brother opened his eyes wide, unwilling to give up. He held the absolute heaven sword tightly, unwilling to let go. As it turned out, OL5 had purposely pretended that he was no match for the enemy, but in reality, he had secretly placed a powerful lightning explosion talisman on the absolute heaven sword scabbard. Number 4 was careless and fell into the trap. Now, he was seriously injured and on the verge of death. "Give it to me." The fifth brother dragged the absolute heaven sword out of the fourth brother's grasp. However, he had just been hit by the sword, and his injuries were not light. After snatching the absolute heaven sword, he sat on the ground. The absolute heaven sword in his hand fell out of his hand and fell to the ground. He endured the pain in his stomach and struggled to reach out to pick it up. Unexpectedly, a smooth, white, jade-like palm gently picked up the absolute heaven sword. The fifth brother looked up abruptly and saw that Su Yu, who was on the verge of death just now, was standing there unscathed. His sleeve gently wiped the blood-stained scabbard of the absolute heaven sword. "You're not dead?" The fifth brother's heart skipped a beat. Countless eras had made him realize that he and the fourth brother had been fooled. Su Yu smiled faintly. "I'm not dead. I'm just a little tired, so I'm lying down to rest. Why did the two of you fight among yourselves?" The fourth brother also understood what was going on. He was angry and furious. You tricked us?" Su Yu said helplessly. "I stuck the sword here, and you fought each other to the death in order to snatch it. What does it have to do with me? I didn't incite you to do it." The two great saints were ashamed and angry at the same time. They were strong enough to be fooled by a young boy. No, it was not fooling. It was because the other party was well-versed in the human heart. He had long predicted that they would fight each other to the death for the absolute heaven sword. And he had also predicted that the two of them would end up in a lose-lose situation. "Who are you?" "Back then, you were the one who stirred up trouble with the Sword Saint clan, weren't you?" The fourth brother and the fifth brother suddenly realized that this person was the black-robed man who stirred up trouble underground. So you put the absolute heaven sword back on his waist and said lightly, "It's a pleasure to meet you too." Back then, thanks to the hospitality of the Sword Saint clan, I was able to experience a near-death experience. At that time, Su Yu was vigilant and escaped from the underground first. He was afraid that he would also become a sacrificial soul for the absolute heaven sword. "Who are you?" The two asked again. This person's cultivation was not the best, but his mind was too terrifying. When the Sword Saint clan was underground, he had predicted the enemy's movements and determined the enemy's position ahead of time. Now, he had defeated them without any bloodshed, causing both sides to suffer. Su Yu said lightly, "A person you shouldn't have provoked." With a wave of his palm, the EMO soul calming bell appeared in his left palm, and the black ape slave ring appeared in his right palm. "Originally, I wanted to kill you, but I suddenly changed my mind." Su Yu said lightly, "My power is just beginning, and I need a few gatekeepers. Since you two are so good at fighting, I will arrange for you to guard the gate." Guard the mountain gate? That was something that only slaves would do. "Boy, we are like tigers that are bullied by dogs. But if you want us to bow our heads and be slaves, you are dreaming," the fourth brother scolded sternly. Unexpectedly, as soon as he finished speaking, Su Yu threw out his palm, and the EMO soul calming bell grew in the wind, turning into a giant 3 feet tall bell, and suppressed the fourth brother within it. Then, the sound of continuous vibration rang out. Even a single soul attack would be extremely damaging to a great sage, let alone a series of them. After dozens of continuous vibrations, the roar inside had already turned into a painful plea. Su Yu was unmoved. After more than 100 continuous vibrations, he opened the EMO soul calming bell only when the pleading sound was weak. As a result, the fourth brother collapsed into a pile of mud, and his consciousness was on the verge of collapse. Su Yu threw out his palm, and the black ape slave ring was put on his foot without any resistance. Then, Su Yu looked at the fifth brother and weighed the EMO soul calming bell in his hand. With a playful look in his eyes, he said, "Are you going to put it in yourself, or do you want me to do it?" The fifth brother's eyelids twitched as he looked at the half-dead fourth brother, and then looked at the EMO soul calming bell. He gritted his teeth and said, I will do it myself." The situation was beyond his control, so he could only endure the humiliation and put his foot into the black ape slave ring. Su Yu smiled slightly and activated it. The black ape slave ring suddenly shrank, and both of their feet were tightly bound at the same time. Chapter 2975. Its name was no longer the black ape slave ring, but the sword slave ring. After this battle, Suyu gained two more treasures. One was the EMO soul calming bell, and the other was the sword slave ring. In addition, the great scythe of 10,000 calamities was also recovered. Emo Hong flashed out from the darkness, looking at Suyu with a hint of awe in his eyes. This man was too good at scheming. He thought that Suyu was lying on the ground, pretending to be dead, intending to give the two great sages of the sword's sacred clan a surprise attack. Unexpectedly, the result was that he provoked the two of them to kill each other with a sword, and then effortlessly captured the two of them. In terms of temperament, this man was a little too terrifying. Aren't you openly making an enemy of the sword's sacred clan by doing this? Emo Hong glanced around. Although those great sages were thousands of miles away, how could the situation here be hidden from their perception? It wouldn't be long before the entire region would know that the two strong men of the sword's sacred clan had become slaves of one person. At that time, there would inevitably be a lot of trouble. Suyu said with a faint smile, "How do you know that I didn't do it on purpose?" He wasn't stupid. How could he not understand the meaning of this? Insisting on doing this was part of his plan. Emo Hong was stunned, completely unable to understand what Suyu was thinking. "Okay, let's go first," Suyu said. He flashed to the side of the holy thief and Su Kai'er and took them away. Not long after they left, tens of thousands of messages appeared, frantically spreading in all directions. A Blood Mountain mine was destroyed by an unknown strong man, and then the two strong men of the Sword Sacred clan were crushed by the powerful man. They were all subdued, and all their treasures fell into the hands of the powerful man. This news swept through every corner of the illusionary sky like an earthquake. After Su Yu and the others arrived at a safe place, he simply healed the holy thief's injuries, making him feel much better. "Holy thief, can you tell me now how to lift the curse on my body?" Su Yu looked at the sky. Thanks to thee, or that was being nurtured, it had been broken, and the curse of the holy mountain had weakened a lot. Otherwise, the battle with the enemy just now would have been troublesome. The holy thief breathed a sigh of relief and said, "The best way to lift the curse is to wash the body with the blood of the son of heaven's descendants." Weren't the descendants of the son of heaven those stone men? Holy Mountain has set up a team of stone men in every region, Holy Pirate said. They guard the region. If you have the guts, you can go and capture a few stone men and take their blood. Was it that simple? Where are the stone men of the cloud, desolate territory? Suyu asked. Holy Pirate looked in a certain direction. It is at Sangtian Mountain. Oh, what a coincidence. The temporary stronghold that Suyu had found for the Cauldron was a medium-sized territory on its Sangtian Mountain. Then let's go, Suyu said, not daring to hesitate. As he spoke, he could already feel traces of dark and gloomy energy surrounding his body. If we don't leave now, I'm afraid that we will run into some unlucky incident, Suyu said. Saint Thief thought so too. The group immediately set off for Sangtian Mountain. At that time, in the battlefield, a group of ancient sages and great sages were busy dividing up the remains of the black ape dragon. Suddenly, a petite figure rushed over. Am I too late? The newcomer looked at the dried blood mountain and couldn't help but feel disappointed. She was Bai Shui, who came after hearing the news. It was a pity that she missed the most exciting moment. I don't know which bastard dug up the ore again. Bai Shui didn't know the true meaning of the fossil. She stomped her feet and snorted. Seeing that it was irreversible, she had to say, Forget it. Let's continue to look for that bastard Ryu. Don't let me find you, or I will kill you. Thinking of Suyu using his statue seal and engraving countless documents, she was driven mad. However, it was easier said than done to find him. There were a total of 100 realms in the 10,000 Zun Cave, and each realm was extremely vast. How could she find him? Bai Shui was dejected and wandered aimlessly. One day later, Suyu and the others passed by a large-scale spiritual land. This place was controlled by a Saint clan. With the Saint clan as the center, a considerable degree of civilization was born. Countless living beings lived here, vaguely forming an incomparably huge country. This is the stronghold of the Sangtian Mountain's first Saint clan. There is a transportation portal in the city. We can use it to save time. Holy Pirate was very familiar with this place. Suyu readily agreed. His Yuan level space domain was not strong enough to teleport so many people at the same time. It was imperative to use the transportation portal. The group of people landed in the city and went straight to the transportation portal. The transportation portal here belonged to the Heavenly Dove Saint Clan, which was the continuation of the Tsangtian Mountain's first Saint Clan. The King of Hell you killed was a subordinate force of the Heavenly Dove Saint Clan. You'd better not let anyone recognize you. As they approached the Saint Clan, Holy Pirate suddenly remembered. The news that Suyu brought the King of Hell into the Blood Mountain and caused him to be cursed to death had already spread throughout the world. This piece of spiritual land was no exception. Suyu's mouth twitched. Why didn't you say so earlier? But now he had no choice but to go. Moreover, as long as they were lucky, it would be difficult to detect him. There were so many creatures in this spiritual land. The continuation of the Heavenly Dove Saint Clan did not need to check everyone, unless they had foresight and happened to know that Suyu would pass through this place. With an indifferent attitude, Suyu led a group of people to land near the transportation palace. As soon as they landed, a group of Imperial Guard from the Saint Clan came up to them. They yelled from afar, "Who are you? Accept the inspection quickly." The blue veins on Suyu's forehead bulged. Was this the effect of the curse? It was too effective. Holy Pirate did not say anything. He immediately displayed his unique domain and turned everyone into a breeze. They disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. In a nearby city, they reappeared in an alley. Holy Pirate looked helpless. As time passes, the curse will become stronger and stronger. If we don't hurry to the Tsangtian Mountain and get the blood of the Stone Man, we will be in more and more trouble. Suyu did not expect that the power of the curse would become stronger and stronger. They are over there. Unexpectedly, as soon as they stopped to rest, they heard the group of Imperial Guards catching up. Holy Pirate was shocked. He had teleported them to a faraway place in an instant. How did those people catch up with them? She closed her eyes to sense and said bitterly, "There is a space-disrupting spell nearby. I have to go around in a big circle." This place was very close to the place where they had just met the Imperial Guards. However, unexpectedly, the group of Imperial Guards had misjudged them and chased after another group of people, allowing them to escape. This curse doesn't seem to be very effective. Suker crooked her neck and said with a smile. So you cannot laugh at all. Based on his short experience, once the curse was activated, it would not stop. Who knew what kind of extreme curse they would encounter later? Chapter 2976. Ryu, who are you looking at? Sukai, noticed Suyu's unusual behavior and looked over. Outside the alley, a petite, beautiful girl in a snow-white robe was hurrying past. Sukai stared at Suyu in confusion and said, "You are a woman, but you're interested in beautiful women." Shoo! Suyu hurriedly shushed her to stop her from speaking. This woman was none other than the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Law Alliance, Bai Shui. He had completely destroyed Bai Shui's statue seal. If Bai Shui found out, he would be in big trouble. The veins on Suyu's forehead were throbbing. He knew that the curse would not disappear so easily. It would only get worse. The world was so big, yet he had run into Bai Shui. Who would believe that it was a coincidence? Unfortunately, Suyu was one step too late. He could not stop Sukai's voice from spreading. Just as Bai Shui was about to walk over, she suddenly heard a sound coming from the alley beside her and casually glanced over. She glanced sideways and saw a group of strangers hiding in the dark. She furrowed her brows, but didn't take a closer look and continued to move forward. Suyu heaved a sigh of relief. He could not help but poke Sukai's forehead. "Be careful. You're not familiar with this place, so don't attract attention." Sukai did not care. "You were the one who didn't blink when looking at beautiful women, and now you are blaming me." She said this, but her expression was mischievous. Her attitude towards Suyu was very intimate. Sukai would never forget the scene of Suyu sacrificing himself to block the black ape's chain. For a moment, she felt like she had found a father in Ryu. "All right, let's leave this place quickly," Suyu said. The holy thief pondered and said, Yes, but we can't go to the transportation portal for the time being. It must be cordoned off. Suyu agreed. Let's find an inn for the night. Their escape just now must have triggered some sort of alert. The transportation portal might already be full of guards searching for them. Let's see what happens in 2 or 3 days, Suyu said. The group immediately left and found a very remote inn. It was far from the main street and in a residential area. It would be difficult for ordinary people to find it, so it should be very safe. The 3 of us are plagued by curses, and we can't guarantee that we won't run into any danger. So, please don't leave the inn, Suyu reminded them. Holy Pirate and Sukai nodded seriously. They had already seen the power of the curse and knew how terrifying it was. As such, Suyu lived alone in a room, next to the god thief and Sukai. He sat down cross-legged and began to recover from his injuries. Lowering his head to look at the ghastly injuries left on his body, Suyu's heart was heavy. Even the body of the emperor is so badly injured. What would happen if I had an ordinary body? After coming to a 9-star civilization, the danger he encountered was more and more intense. This son of heaven's body had helped him a lot. Otherwise, he might have died a long time ago. If he returned to his original body through the Yin-Yang Gate and encountered similar danger again, as he thought of this, Suyu couldn't help but murmur, I wonder if the 9-star civilization has any defensive measures to strengthen the physique of the human race. Suddenly, a thought flashed through Suyu's mind. He clapped his hand and sent his consciousness into the 9-jade spiritual pearl. Since the battle on the Blood Mountain, he hadn't had the time to carefully examine the stones that had been collected. However, when Suyu came in, his pupil shrank, and he found that the stones were strangely surrounding the thatched cottage in the 9-jade spiritual pearl. That thatched cottage used to be the place where the body of the 9-tailed emperor was kept. These stones seemed to have sensed something and began to surround him. Suyu's arrival caused the stones to react. They gathered together, barely forming a figure the size of a 3-year-old child, and took the initiative to attack Suyu. Haha, you're still not behaving yourself when you're here. Suyu's mind moved, and a strong pressure suddenly appeared, pressing the stone to the ground and preventing it from turning over. He had tempered the 9-jade spiritual pearl for hundreds of years, and it was like an extension of his arm. Looking at the extremely spiritual stone, Suyu touched his chin. He tried to take the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations and said, I don't know if this stone can withstand the attack of the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations. As he thought of this, he struck it down hard. Creak! Even the black ape was split in half in the air, and this stone was no exception. It shattered on the spot. Suyu couldn't help but be disappointed. He had thought that the stone body of the 9-tailed emperor, which had been nurtured by absorbing the essence of the entire 9-star civilization, would be quite hard. Now it seemed that he had been expecting too much. However, what happened next shocked Suyu. The shattered pieces of rock actually reformed into a whole again, with the stone that was glowing in the center as the center. The rest of the stones reformed themselves. The most incredible thing was that not even a trace of powder was lost. This, Suyu's eyes flashed. He gathered all his strength and wielded the great scythe of 10,000 calamities with all his might, slashing at the stone man again. Poof! The whole stone man was instantly pulverized. With the full power of the great scythe of 10,000 calamities, its power was no less than that of the absolute heaven sword. How could the stone man withstand it? However, it was the other stones that were pulverized. The stone that was glowing was completely unscathed. Yes, there was not even a trace of a mark left on it after such a terrifying attack. One could only imagine how hard it was. What was even more shocking was that the particles that had been pulverized into dust were all condensed back into the stone man. Moreover, with the passage of time, the cracks on the stone man gradually disappeared, and it was replaced by a real stone man. Suyu's eyes gradually brightened. It seems that my human body is not much weaker than the body of this mirror flower, heavenly prince. He stared at the stone man with a glimmer of light in his eyes. Glancing around, the 9-jade spiritual pearl was empty. The little Kailin and Shungu of the past had disappeared over the years. Only Xiao Dai, who was silently evolving, and the familiar nursery were left. Is life a constant cycle of gaining and losing? Suyu murmured to himself. He had obtained the ultimate strength that he wanted today, but how many familiar faces had he lost? Even if he had mastered the domain of life and death, he could not stop their passing. Was this a bondage that he could not get rid of? Birth, old age, sickness, and death. Was this really a fate that he could not escape? Suyu had mastered the domain of life and death, but he still could not get rid of the bondage. It was as if something invisible had arranged the changes of their lives for them. I'm still not strong enough to escape the bondage, Suyu said, clenching his fists. If he was strong enough, who could arrange his life? Chapter 29:77. When his eyes looked at the world again, he suddenly felt that his perspective was different from before. It seemed that the world in his eyes was clearer than before, and he could even see some obscure things in the world. Suddenly, Suyu felt a slight warmth in his chest. Looking down, he saw that the ultimate divine tablet was emitting a soft light. Suyu was surprised and immediately took out of his pocket. He saw a few blurry ancient words flickering on the ultimate ruin's divine monument. Suyu stared at it for a long time before he could barely recognize it. It was the words Ultimate Emperor Master. Ultimate Emperor Master? Suyu's eyes flashed with deep surprise. He already knew that the ultimate realm was a mysterious world independent of the great beginning realm, and it was also a world of the dead. Could the Sinkhole Emperor Lord be the transcendent exalt who controlled the Sinkhole world? He tried to touch the four characters with his fingers. Unexpectedly, the moment he touched them, he felt a piercing pain on his fingertips, as if he had been stabbed by something sharp. Suyu took a deep breath, his eyes turning to the extreme as he stared at the four flashing words. Finally, when his eyes were filled with tears, he found some clues. The words Ultimate Emperor Master were not words at all. They were obviously formed by the condensation of a series of remnant marks. Each remnant mark was extremely sharp, and Suyu's fingers had just touched these marks, which was why he felt the pain. Suyu was surprised, as if he had discovered a whole new continent. He originally thought that the ultimate divine tablet recorded the ancestral technique remnant marks left behind by the Taichu Taoist master. But now it seemed that not only the Taichu Taoist masters, but also the mysterious ultimate Emperor Master's secret technique remnant marks. Suyu's heart was pounding. This discovery was too shocking. Apart from the Taichu Taoist master, no one knew that there were remnant marks left behind by the ultimate Emperor Master on the ultimate divine tablet. However, when Suyu wanted to carefully examine the remnant marks on it, he could not identify them. It was as if there was an invisible barrier that prevented him from continuing to examine it. After trying for a long time to no avail, Suyu had to give up. The treasure mountain is in front of me, but I can only look at it across the river. Suyu was very depressed. However, why didn't I see the words Ultimate Ruins Emperor Master before? Suyu asked in surprise. The divine monument had been in his possession for a long time, so why did it only appear now? As Suyu recalled the enlightenment he had experienced in the 9 Jade spiritual pearl, he could not help but guess that the enlightenment he had just experienced had caused his view of the world to sublimate. Only then could he see the words Sinkhole Overlord that ordinary people could not see. It seems that if I want to learn the secret techniques of the ultimate ruins Emperor Master, I must strengthen my comprehension. Suyu suddenly understood. However, the word epiphany was easier said than done. If it wasn't for the fact that he had revisited this place and felt something in his heart, naturally entering a state of epiphany, it would have been difficult to create the conditions for epiphany at other times. Seeing that there were still 2 days left to wait, Suyu simply sat down cross-legged on the spot and displayed the realm of time. He was ready to try to find the epiphany he had just experienced in 10,000 times the time. However, as soon as he displayed the time domain, Suyu felt that something was amiss. However, his time domain had become different from before, faintly mixed with a trace of mysterious power. In the past, when the time domain was displayed, it was faintly suffused with light red. However, at this moment, there was a trace of strange gold in the light red. What is this? Suyu immediately felt that something was wrong. However, when the time domain was fully displayed, Suyu was even more shocked. The flow of time around him had accelerated by 20,000 times, more than twice as fast as before. In the past, time acceleration could only reach 10,000 times at most. What's going on? Suyu did not expect this, and his eyes were full of confusion and shock. Why did the time origin domain suddenly become so much stronger? After a long time, Suyu's eyes flashed, and he tried to display the other 7 great domains. Without exception, all of the domains had more than doubled in strength. Moreover, there was a trace of gold in them. These are... Suyu remembered that when he was fighting against the black ape, he had used the 8 great domains to resist it. The 8 great domains were attacked by the black ape again and again, and finally, they were completely shattered. Could it be because the 8 great origin domains have been tempered? Thinking of this, Suyu's emotions surged. The 9th realm had once said that there were a total of 12 invincible existences in the world. They were the Taichu Taoist Master, the 10 Holy Mountain Heavenly Sons, and the Renzu. This was because they had mastered a power that was superior to all living creatures, the absolute beginning force. It was precisely because of the existence of this power that they were superior to everything else. There is only one way to obtain the absolute beginning force, and that was to train one's own cultivation to the extreme. One of them was the domain. When the domain was trained to the extreme, one could achieve the absolute beginning force and become an existence that was superior to all things in the world. Suyu's 8 great origin domains had long been trained to the extreme. After such a long period of accumulation, they had long reached the point of transformation. After experiencing the black ape's continuous bombardment, it finally underwent a transformation, showing signs of evolving into primordial force. This discovery made Suyu extremely happy. This trip to the Blood Mountain could be said to be full of rewards. Originally, his original plan was to just go to the Blood Mountain to explore, and the best hope was to retrieve the great scythe of 10,000 calamity. But now, the rewards were beyond imagination. Not only did he find the great scythe of 10,000 calamity, but he also obtained the EMO, soul calming bell, and the famous sword slave ring, as well as the 9-tailed heavenly sunstone that had been successfully nurtured. Not only that, but Suyu's domain had also undergone great changes. This series of gains was extremely delightful. Suyu suppressed the excitement in his heart and began to try to accelerate time by 20,000 times. 2 days had passed, but Suyu had already experienced a full 40,000 days, which was equivalent to more than 100 years. Although it was difficult to comprehend, as he had guessed, the transformation of the time domain made Suyu extremely happy. Whoosh! Suyu opened his eyes tiredly, but there was a hint of joy in his eyes. Compared to the curse that plagued him, this time the harvest was more valuable. Looking at the time, Suyu felt that it was about time to set off. At this time, the formation should not be under martial law. After he informed the holy thief and the others, he opened the door and went outside. Unexpectedly, just as he stepped out of the door, a guest walked out of the corridor. Caught off guard, Suyu stepped on the back of the other party's foot. Suyu said subconsciously, "Sorry." The other party raised his head in slight annoyance and shouted, "Don't you have eyes?" But halfway through the sentence, the other party's face suddenly froze. Suyu's face also froze, because the face that was raised was none other than Bai Shui. The world was so big, the Holy Clan city was so vast, the inn was so remote, and there were so many guests. Chapter 2978. This was probably the best example of what it meant to celebrate too early. "It's you, at such a close distance. How could Bai Shui not recognize Suyu's scent?" "It's not me. You've got the wrong person," Suyu said hurriedly. However, as soon as he finished speaking, he realized that he had said something unnecessary. Bai Shui's eyes narrowed immediately as she stared at Suyu. "Did I ask who you are?" That "it's not me" had betrayed Suyu. Suyu coughed dryly and said, "Oh, it's you, Bai Shui. I haven't seen you for a year, and you've become even more beautiful. I almost didn't recognize you." Bai Shui gritted her teeth and laughed. Then, she grabbed Su Yu's sleeve and pushed him back into the room. "Come in." Bang! The door was slammed shut. The holy pirate, who had just stepped out of the room, was dumbfounded. "Master, what's wrong?" Su Kai could not help but ask when she heard the sound. The corners of the holy pirate's mouth twitched. "Is this old friend of your mother really a woman?" Su Kai's eyes narrowed. "I have my doubts too. Judging from her words and actions, she doesn't seem like a woman." At that moment, they heard a crackling sound coming from Su Yu's room. The master and disciple immediately leaned against the door and window to eavesdrop on what was going on inside. "You've made me look for you so hard." Bai Shui gritted her teeth in hatred. "Do you know how badly you've hurt me?" The sudden appearance of a large number of documents with the seal of the Heavenly Law Alliance had exposed the fact that she had lost the seal. The older generation in the Heavenly Law Alliance had condemned her and ordered her to find the seal and the statue's seal. Otherwise, she would be removed from her position as the Alliance Master. During this period, she had been questioned and questioned by countless believers. Only she knew how much she had been wronged. Su Yu let go of her hand and said calmly, "How did I hurt you?" Still playing dumb? Bai Shui gritted her teeth and stretched out her hand. "Give me back the seal of the Heavenly Law Alliance and the statue's seal." Su Yu looked sincere as he said, "Actually, I wanted to give them back to you a long time ago, but I didn't have the chance." As he spoke, he took out two glossy objects from his space ring. He handed one of the balls to her. White snow wiped away the glossy surface, revealing the heavenly Tao Union seal. Seeing that the seal was intact, White Snow heaved a sigh of relief. "At least I didn't lose it," White Snow murmured. She was really worried that Su Yu wouldn't cherish her things and would carelessly throw them away or let them be snatched away by someone else. Now it seemed that he had thought too much. "Give me the statue's seal as well." White Snow extended her palm. Su Yu casually stuffed it into her palm and said, "Don't worry, I don't need to destroy your things. This isn't my style." Bai Shui didn't think much of it. She took the orb and touched it with her hand. A complete statue seal appeared before her eyes. It was not damaged at all. "At least you know what's good for you." Bai Shui blinked and snorted. Su Yu's face showed no sign of guilt. "I told you, I'm not that kind of person." Bai Shui pouted and placed the seal together with the seal, ready to stuff it into her space ring. Unexpectedly, when the two objects touched, a cracking sound was heard. Bai Shui was stunned. She looked down to see that the statue seal had split into two halves from the bottom. She could not help but be stunned for a moment, until Su Yu let out a cry of surprise and blame. "Bai Shui, how could you be so careless as to destroy your own seal sculpture?" I didn't." Bai Shui was stunned, hurriedly trying to explain herself. She had only touched it lightly. How could she have destroyed the sturdy statue seal? "You are too irresponsible. How could you treat such an important thing so roughly?" Su Yu lectured her. "As the Alliance Master, how could I be careless when dealing with the Alliance Master's legacy? To think that I have been carefully keeping them, hoping that one day I would return them to you intact. But in the end, you actually destroyed them. What a waste of my kindness." Bai Shui was at a loss, stammering, I don't know either." Su Yu sighed and shook his head. "Forget it. I don't want to say anything more. You destroyed the statue seal yourself. Think of a way to deal with it. I still have things to do, so I'll take my leave first." Oh, okay." Bai Shui looked at the broken statue, her eyebrows furrowed. She was thinking about how to explain this to the old Alliance Masters. Once the statue seal was broken, it would be extremely troublesome to apply for a new one, and it might not even be possible. Su Yu left silently. Outside the door, the holy pirate, Su Kai, and the others looked at him in surprise. "What are you looking at? Don't you have proper business to attend to?" Su Yu said impatiently. "Let's go." Su Kai looked at Su Yu's back and muttered, "I feel like something is wrong." Su Yu led them out of the inn. As soon as they left, he rushed forward without a care in the world. He felt a little guilty, but he managed to fool them. In the room, Bai Shui rubbed her forehead and sighed. "What should I do now?" She felt a headache coming on. She touched the broken statue and had an urge to cry. But as she thought about it, Bai Shui suddenly thought of something. "Wait, where is he?" She got up and looked around. only to find that Suyu had left while she was distracted. Why did he leave in such a hurry? Bai Shui was suspicious. Also, why did he pretend not to know me when we first met? And why did he say that he had been preparing to return the 2 items to me? The more she thought about it, the more she felt that something was wrong. Finally, she looked at the broken statue seal in her hand, her mind roaring. This was definitely Suyu's doing. She had only accidentally touched it, and it had finally broken. But this guy did not know how to repent or apologize, and he had even shamelessly taught her a lesson. Thinking of this, Bai Shui was so angry that her lungs were about to explode. You damn liar. Bai Shui stomped her feet on the ground, her eyes as wide as bells. Then, she flew up into the sky, knocking over the roof of the inn, and stood in the void, looking in all directions. She gritted her teeth and said, "Damn liar. I will definitely find you." Suyu suddenly sneezed when he was about to reach the transportation portal. He could not help but look behind him. He could not help but click his tongue. Could Bai Shui have come back to her senses? What's wrong? Is the curse acting up? Sukai, said with a faint smile. Suyu grunted. Don't mention the curse. The curse was a very vicious thing. Even in the vast sea of people, he had still managed to bump into Bai Shui. No one would believe it if he said it out loud. Those behind, are you guys going or not? In front of the transportation portal, a white-robed martial artist in charge of the spell frowned as he berated them. Suyu and the rest immediately stepped forward. Let's go, including M.O. Hung, for people jumped onto the spell. 3 of the 4 were cursed. The moment they jumped onto the spell, the glow of the spell suddenly extinguished. It quickly dimmed and stopped operating. The white-robed elder was stunned. The spell is broken? This is too strange. It has been operating for hundreds of years without any problems. Why would it suddenly break? Chapter 2979. The curse was extraordinarily efficacious. The spell, which had been safe and sound for hundreds of years, was broken as soon as he stepped on it. It did not take him even a moment to catch his breath. The holy pirate and Sukai, faces fell, and the corners of their mouths twitched. The curse was really a troublesome thing. It seems that our curse is getting more and more serious. If we don't find a way to solve it, the consequences will be unimaginable, the holy pirate reminded them. Suyu looked at the transmission portal with hatred and said, "Forget it. Let's cross over directly." His space domain had evolved, and it contained a hint of the absolute beginning force. The speed was about twice as fast as before. Although it would take some time, it was better than being stuck here. Moreover, he could not waste time here at all, because there was still Bai Shui, who could come back to her senses at any time. Let's go. Suyu had always been decisive. He decisively displayed the space domain, took everyone with him, and teleported in the direction of the stone man. Swoosh! Everyone only felt that the space was reversed and the universe was overturned. It was as if they had crossed an infinite space. However, when they opened their eyes, they found that they were still in the same place as if they had never moved. If the people around the spell hadn't looked at them with astonished eyes, they would have suspected that they had never left at all. You guys, you teleported away and then came back. What is the meaning of this? The white-robed elder who guarded the spell asked unhappily. It was strange that as soon as they left, the spell miraculously worked again. However, as soon as they came back, the spell could not be used again. It was as if the spell had a grudge against Suyu and the others. Suyu was a little stunned. He had been cultivating for more than 200 years, and the space domain had been as skillful as eating and drinking. However, this was the first time that he had used the space domain with all his strength, and the result was that he had returned to his original position after making a big circle. Suyu did not believe it, so he tried the heaven and earth great shift again. As a result, Suyu's face fell when he saw that they had returned to their original position again, without any deviation. Even the holy pirate calmed down and said in a low voice, "The curse is much greater than expected." She tried to take out a space talisman to take everyone away. However, the result was that the talisman, which could cross countless mountains and rivers, could only take them a few steps, The holy pirate said, "The more powerful the space assistance we use, the worse the effect will be." In other words, they could only fly normally, which would minimize the effect of the curse. Su Yu's face sank. He had a bad premonition in his heart. With such a serious curse, so what if they succeeded in finding the stone man? Even traveling was a problem, let alone trying to capture a few stone men quietly. So you looked at Mo Hong. He was the only one among them who had not been cursed. Mo Hong, give it a try. So you took out a space charm and passed it to him. Mo Hong could tell that there was a serious problem with Su Yu and his group. Knowing that the situation was serious, he immediately activated the space amulet. In the end, the space talisman was successfully activated, but the distance it brought them was only half the original distance. Mo Hong's expression also changed as he said, "Could it be that he thought for a moment, took out a dagger, and casually threw it into the sky. In the end, the dagger had unexpectedly stabbed towards Mo Hong. The curse is contagious. Mo Hong's expression was a little stiff. His curse was not as serious as Su Yu's, but it was definitely not light. Su Yu and the holy pirate's faces were extremely gloomy. If even Mo Hong was cursed, then who among them could go and capture the stone man? By the time they found the right person, the curse would have reached an extremely terrifying level, and they would probably die on the spot. At that moment, an angry voice came from afar. "Ah, I will kill you." Su Yu's mouth twitched when he heard that. Trouble is coming. But suddenly his mind flashed, and an idea came to mind. The holy pirate frowned as he looked at Bai Shui. "Do you need my help?" He meant to get rid of Bai Shui. Although Bai Shui had a faint aura of a great saint, she was still too young. She must have just broken through, so killing her would not be difficult. "If you kill her, who will get the blood of the stone man for you?" Su Yu smiled meaningfully and took the lead to rise into the air, blatantly attracting Bai Shui's attention. The holy pirate and the others did not understand Su Yu's meaning, so they could only follow him. Bai Shui clenched her teeth, trembling with anger. "I'll see where you can escape to." She was determined to not let Su Yu escape. Even if he fled to the ends of the earth, she would catch him and bring him back. Time passed by in a flash. After a whole month, the two parties, one chasing and the other fleeing, crossed almost half of the cloud-desolate territory. Finally, on this day, Su Yu and the others arrived at a mountain shrouded in golden clouds. No, to be exact, it was a golden mountain. Su Yu was no stranger to that mountain. It was the Little Saint Mountain when the Holy Mountain destroyed the world, when it was an 8-star civilization. It was located in the center of the cloud-desolate territory, overlooking all directions. Visible to the naked eye, stone men patrolled the Little Saint Mountain. Su Yu's eyes lit up. Were those the stone men? But the curse at the moment was too serious. When Su Yu looked at the stone men, several stone men coincidentally looked up at the sky and saw Su Yu and the others. Flying is prohibited in the sky above the holy mountain. Light of destruction warning. Boom! A light of destruction that Su Yu was particularly familiar with swept over. Unlike when it was an 8-star civilization, the Little Saint Mountain was now in a 9-star civilization. It was unknown if it was closer to the real holy mountain, so the power that erupted was quite terrifying. It was enough to threaten the strong men of the great saint level. Su Yu and the others immediately dodged. However, under the influence of the curse, the light of destruction that they had clearly dodged exploded unstably, enveloping Su Yu, the holy pirate, Su Kaier, and Mo Hong. All 4 of them were affected, and they were blown away one after another, their bodies covered in injuries. Su Kaier's cultivation was the weakest among them, and her injuries were the most serious. Su Yu immediately rushed over to heal her. Even the stone men patrolling on the holy mountain were shocked. The light of destruction was an extremely stable energy, and 1 in a million would not necessarily explode. Not only did this one explode, but it also accurately enveloped all 4 of them. They had never seen such a situation before. Su Yu stabilized Su Kaier's injuries and looked angrily at the stone men below. He pulled out the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations and struck the holy mountain fiercely. A huge arc-shaped energy attacked the holy mountain fiercely, causing it to tremble violently. Although it did not cause any damage to the holy mountain, it was undoubtedly a provocation to the holy mountain. Immediately, countless strong men of the holy mountain leaped up from the holy mountain and launched an attack on them. Suyu's eyes flashed, and he said, "Let's go." Instead of continuing to escape, they turned around and went back the way they came. It went without saying who they would meet along the way. Chapter 2980. As expected, Bai Shui chased after them not long after. Her face turned cold as she said through gritted teeth, "You dare come back?" She rejoiced in her heart. She had thought that Suyu would have escaped long ago, given how cunning he was. Who knew that he would still be nearby? Even Bai Shui found it hard to believe. But when she looked closely, Bai Shui realized that Suyu was followed by a group of stone men stationed here. Bai Shui immediately recognized them and gasped. The stone men patrol? How could she not know that the stone men patrol stationed in every region had the responsibility of suppressing the local area? They could kill anyone first and report to the higher-ups later. Even if they killed wrongly, the other party would only be severely punished. But if they were killed unjustly, they would die in vain. Seeing a large group of stone men patrol chasing after Suyu and the others, Bai Shui tactfully dodged to the side, not wanting to be implicated. She was still gloating in her heart. You escaped, and now you're being targeted by the stone men patrol. Suyu and the others brushed past Bai Shui. Before they left, Suyu turned to look at Bai Shui, frowning. "Why are you only here now? We've been waiting for you for so long. Let's go. The stonemen are going to catch us." Bai Shui was stunned. Waiting for her for so long? What us? But the next moment, Bai Shui was startled. One of the stone men who had caught up to them launched a domain attack at Bai Shui, shouting, "Inform the camp they have other people. Ask the camp to send reinforcements." "What? Wait. I'm not with them. I'm here to kill them." Bai Shui shouted as she dodged the domain attack, trying to disassociate herself from the stone men. If the Holy Mountain determined that she was with Suyu and the others, it would implicate the Heavenly Law Alliance. The stone person revealed a confused expression and hesitated. At that moment, Suyu, who had already escaped far away, suddenly turned back and used his 8 domains to disperse the stoneman's domain. He then grabbed Bai Shui's arm and said, "Are you crazy? You think you can fool the stonemen patrol like this? Do you think they're idiots?" Hearing this, the stone men chasing from behind had a vicious look in their eyes. Kill them all first. Who knew whether this petite woman was in cahoots with Suyu and his companions? Rather than be deceived by this suspicious woman, they might as well kill them all. Bai Shui was seething with anger, pointing at Suyu with a trembling finger. I'll kill you." Nothing good would come out of being with him. Now, they were actually being targeted by the stoneman patrol. "Quick, inform the camp, and send back the news of the 5 people the stone men ordered." Bai Shui's heart. The reason why the people of the 9-star civilizations had to have official documents was because the Holy Mountain wanted to control all the living beings of the 9-star civilizations. Bai Shui was no exception. If her information was sent back to the Sacred Mountain, the Sacred Mountain will be able to immediately find Bai Shui's origins and punish the Heavenly Law Alliance. The punishment of the Sacred Mountain had always been bloody and merciless. Bai Shui panicked, but a ruthless glint flashed in her eyes. She squinted her eyes and looked around. When she realized that there were only 4 stone men chasing after her, and no one else, she calmed down. "Don't blame me for being ruthless. Don't blame me for being merciless," she thought. As a newly ascended great saint, dealing with 4 stone men was more than enough. She decisively retaliated, raising her hand to summon a hammer glowing with a green light. She controlled it from afar, and the Tao artifact smashed forward with a heat wave. "You dare attack the Stonemen Patrol?" Of course, the stone men were not to be trifled with. They summoned a few powerful talismans. Each talisman could cause considerable damage to a great saint. The power of the talismans was unimaginable. But since Bai Shui was determined to kill, how could she fail? "Go!" She shook her body. Black holes appeared in the space around her, each of them shooting out a hammer-like Tao artifact. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of hammers crashed toward the four stone men. 10,000 hammer formation? You're from the Heavenly Law Alliance? The four stonemen's pupils shrank, their faces aghast. The 10,000 hammer array was one of the most powerful array formations in the Heavenly Law Union. It used hundreds of peerless Tao artifacts, and even great sage experts would die if they encountered it. Run! The Heavenly Law Alliance is rebelling. The four stone men fled in four different directions, desperately sending this urgent message to the camp. Bai Shui gritted her teeth. Destroy. Boom! Hundreds of hammers slammed into the void. Every strike produced a sound wave that could harm one's soul. Hundreds of sound waves stacked together, their power comparable to the Tai's soul-calming bell. The four stone men who had not yet escaped were affected, their souls immediately destroyed. But one of the stone men had successfully sent a message. Bai Shui wanted to stop it, but it was too late. His face was ashen, and his heart fell into an icy valley. But at that moment, a palm suddenly appeared, intercepting the message and quickly destroying it. The owner of the palm was none other than Su Yu. I saved you again. We don't owe each other anything. Su Yu smiled. But as soon as he finished speaking, the 10,000 hammer formation went out of control, targeting Su Yu and launching a sound wave attack. Su Yu's eyebrows twitched. He quickly took out the Yimo Soul calming bell and activated it, preparing to release a soul attack to counteract the opponent's attack. Unexpectedly, the Yimo Soul calming bell was like a dead object, unable to be activated. Upon closer inspection, the Yimo Soul calming bell was damaged. It must have been affected by the great sickle of 10,000 calamities during the Battle of the Blood Mountain. But Su Yu had not noticed it. This damned curse. Su Yu immediately realized that it was caused by the curse. Fortunately, at the critical moment, Su Yu had a brainwave and covered himself with the Yimo Soul calming bell. Just then, the powerful soul attack swept past, and a small part of it penetrated the Yimo Soul calming bell and attacked Su Yu's soul. There was a sharp pain in his head, but the external 10,000 hammer formation was preparing to launch a second attack after the first attack failed. Bai Shui was shocked. She hurriedly withdrew the 10,000 hammer formation, looking stunned. Ruyu, the holy pirate, Sukair, and Mo Hung hurried over and moved the Yimo Soul calming bell away, afraid that Su Yu would be accidentally injured and killed. But the curse had unexpectedly appeared. The Yimo Soul calming bell, which was already damaged, launched an attack when they were shaken. The three of them were very close, and Su Yu himself was inside the Yimo Soul calming bell. Once the attack was launched, the four of them could not imagine what would happen to them. Especially Su Kair. Not only was her cultivation weak, but she was also cursed. She would definitely die. Strange things kept happening, and even Bai Shui could see that something was wrong. Seeing that the Yimo Soul calming bell was about to be launched, she immediately activated the 10,000 hammer formation. Hundreds of hammers pressed down on the Yimo Soul calming bell, preventing it from launching an attack. After a moment of stalemate, the Yimo Soul calming bell finally stopped. Bai Shui heaved a sigh of relief and looked at them suspiciously. Did the few of you enter the Blood Mountain and get cursed? Chapter 2981. Su Yu walked out of the Yimo Soul calming bell and immediately put it away. He rolled his eyes at her. Why aren't you coming over to help? Right now, he did not dare to move recklessly. The curse had reached its peak, and any small movement could cause a huge disaster. Bai Shui nodded and walked forward. She stopped halfway and stared at Su Yu angrily. Why should I help you? Haven't you done enough harm to me? Looking at the four stone golems that couldn't be any more dead, Bai Shui was enraged. She had used him to kill the four stone men. Oh my God, what a great sin. If this was exposed, the entire Heavenly Law Alliance would be implicated and destroyed. Why? Because we saw you kill the stone men. Do you want us to be exposed? Su Yu blinked and said matter-of-factly, the holy thief and Su Kai turned away guiltily, indicating that they were not familiar with Su Yu. They did not know such a shameless person. It was one thing to use him to kill the stone men, but to threaten him? He was so shameless that it made people gasp in admiration. You are shameless. Bai Shui was furious. She stomped her feet, but did not dare to move forward, because Su Yu was holding a communication device in his hand. Yes, not one, but 100. If they were sent out at the same time, she could not intercept all of them. If even one of them was sent out, she and the Heavenly Law Alliance would be finished. Forget it. You. Ruthless. Bai Shui gritted her teeth. Su Yu laughed. You flatter me. Miss Bai Shui, please do me a favor. Bai Shui resisted the urge to tear him apart. What do you need help with? Su Yu pointed at the stone corpses on the ground. Take the blood of the stone men from their bodies and pour it on us. It was that simple. Bai Shui was suspicious. She came in front of the 4 stone men and flipped one of them over. Su Yu and the others broke out in a cold sweat. The stone man was holding an explosive doctrine artifact that was about to explode. Judging from the grade of the doctrine artifact, its power was definitely at the level of the great saint of destruction. It was almost certain that if they personally went to take the blood of the stone men, there would be all sorts of accidents that would kill or seriously injure them. When White Snow flipped over the bodies of the other 3 stone men, she found that all of them had extremely dangerous items on them. Mo Hung wiped the sweat off his forehead and swallowed hard. The curse is really so terrifying. No wonder even the 10,000 saints are no exception. No one understood why all the 10,000 saints experts had clearly left the Blood Mountain, yet they still died so suddenly. Now, they finally had an answer in their hearts. Even 10 myriad saints experts could die from such a terrifying curse. Bai Shui's expression was one of shock as she took their blood and poured it on the 4 of them. As expected, with the stoneman's blood on his body, Su Yu immediately felt relieved. It was as if an invisible shackle had been removed from his body, and his whole body felt indescribably relaxed. The curse has been lifted. Holy Pirate took out a dagger and threw it into the sky. This time, the dagger did not stab any of them. Bai Shui glared at Su Yu, gritting her teeth. Your problem has been solved. Now, shouldn't you solve mine? She took out the seal sculpture and threw it into Su Yu's hands. Su Yu was also at his wit's end. Mr. Mo, can you refine this item? He asked. Mo Hung merely glanced at it and said, It's very simple, especially the seal sculptures of the aristocratic families. It's not difficult to refine them. Huh? If not for the fact that the person who said this was a famous genius craftsman, she might have beaten him up. That tone of contempt for the aristocratic families was infuriating. Mo Hung took the seal sculpture and weighed it in his hands. Do you think that with so many aristocratic families in the world, the Holy Mountain has the patience to refine seal sculptures for all of you? Those are all things that were commissioned by the Mingjian sacred clan, and some of them were even refined under my guidance. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was stunned. The seal sculptures that were so sacred in their hearts were actually made by the person in front of them, but Mo Hung squeezed his palm and the seal sculpture shattered on the spot. A black crystal was exposed from within. The core crystal is intact, and there's no difficulty in refining it, Mo Hung said. We just lack a suitable place to refine artifacts. The Mingjian sacred clan had a holy place to refine artifacts that sealed the disastrous flames of the world, which allowed them to continuously refine seal sculptures. There was no suitable place to refine artifacts in the wilderness. Bai Shui cheered. Come to the Heavenly Law Alliance. We have a top-notch crafting pool. Mo Hung snorted in disdain. Do you think I'll be able to come back if I go to the Heavenly Law Alliance? With his reputation, the old fellows in the Heavenly Law Alliance would use all means to keep him in the Heavenly Law Alliance. Bai Shui thought for a moment, then said, This place is called the Cloud Desolate Territory. I remember that there's a Sangtian mountain in the Cloud Desolate Territory. There's a natural fire pool there, a place to refine artifacts. Hearing this, Su Yu had a strange expression. Sangtian mountain? What a coincidence. And the master of the aristocratic family in charge of the fire pool, Lu Quan, was once a member of the Heavenly Law Alliance. If I were to appear, it would be easy to use the crafting pool. Mo Hung did not reply, instead looking at Su Yu for his opinion. If Su Yu said so, he would go. Sangtian mountain, right? Let's go first." Suyu hid his strange expression, nonchalantly saying. Bai Shui glared at him. "You bastard. Something's wrong with your expression again." Somehow, Bai Shui's body shuddered involuntarily, as if she had a bad feeling. "What about you?" Suyu ignored her and looked at the holy pirate. The latter looked at Suyu deeply and said, "We also have to go back to report. I hope we will have the opportunity to cooperate in the future." Suyu looked at Su Kai and said, "You can go, but she can stay." "What do you mean?" The holy pirate's eyes suddenly became fierce. Suyu looked at her calmly. "Since she is the daughter of an old friend, of course, I will take care of her." Sienna had already left, and Suyu could not let Su Kai wander outside alone. Judging from this experience, if he had not interfered, she and the holy pirate might have met with misfortune. The holy pirate was annoyed, but thinking of Suyu's horror, he did not dare to use force. He only said, "I can't agree, but the force behind me will not agree." "Are you sure you want to be hostile to the force I belong to?" Suyu shook his head. "Not to the extent of being hostile, but if you want to bring Su Kai back, please find someone who I can trust." The holy pirate was ashamed and annoyed. He said, "Fine, I am useless. When I go back, I will find someone who can convince you." After saying that, the holy pirate cast a warning look at Su Kai then turned around and left. Suyu pulled Su Kai who was about to catch up, and said, "Don't you want to know how your mother and father are doing?" Su Kai hesitated for a moment and could not help but stop in her tracks. She said, "Okay, but the next time Master comes, don't stop me from leaving." Suyu nodded and took them to the Tsangtia Mountain. Chapter 2982. At the foot of the Tsangtia Mountain. It was a desolate forest deep in the mountains. Energy was scarce, and there were only a few ferocious beasts. However, there was a group of strangers stationed here. Compared to the large families and even the Saint clans in the Tsangtia Mountain, their cultivations were generally very low. The sinful lady sat cross-legged on a green boulder, commanding the members of the Cauldron to set up a new camp. She had followed Suyu's request and stayed far away from the troublesome places in Heaven's Sky. She had chosen this place to set up camp temporarily to avoid trouble. Suddenly, the sinful lady opened her eyes and looked up at the boundless sky. With her acute senses as a middle-stage, heavenly law master, she saw two ancient sage-level strong men fighting in the sky, and they were quickly moving towards the camp. The sinful lady could not help but stand up and look at the sky solemnly. What made her feel even worse was that the battle between the two sides was gradually moving from the sky to the ground. At the end of the world, she could vaguely see a giant white-headed eagle chasing a fire phoenix. The fire phoenix's strength was obviously weaker than its opponent, and its right wing was severely injured, so it was falling all the way. On the other hand, the white-headed eagle was extremely ferocious, chasing after it fiercely. As the two of them flapped their wings, strong winds blew for tens of thousands of miles, and the trees on the ground were directly flattened. The flames that fell from the fire phoenix even turned the ground into a sea of fire. "Trouble has come," the sinful lady said coldly. She looked at the camp and the members of the Cauldron who were hurriedly hiding underground. She opened her arms and drew an arc in the air. With her strength as a middle-stage heavenly law master, she drew a giant light ball that enveloped the camp. The formation of the camp had not been completely set up yet, so she could only rely on herself. Crash! The battle between the two demons quickly spread to the camp. Strong winds and raging flames bombarded the light shield, making crackling sounds. The light shield was also shaking, as if it was about to shatter. "I'll help you." Lu Zhu and the other Pathmasters appeared one after another, fighting with the sinful lady, trying their best to resist. Only then did the light shield become much more stable. The two great demons fought as they walked, not caring about the small camp under their feet at all, and directly flew past it. After experiencing the strong impact of a needle, the remaining power gradually dissipated, and the two birds also disappeared. Lu Zhu heaved a sigh of relief and said, As expected of a 9-star civilization, to encounter two ancient sage-level demons fighting in the wilderness. In an 8-star civilization, it was impossible for this to happen. In 8-star civilizations, even ancient sages could not be born. The sinful lady persisted for a moment. Only after she was certain that the two of them had gone far away did she retract all of her power. She took a deep breath and said worriedly, "It's better to let them be vigilant." Maybe the words were still in her mouth when she suddenly sensed something. She abruptly raised her head to look at the sky above them. A ball of crimson flames fell from the sky and smashed into the camp. The sinful woman's expression changed slightly, and she once again unleashed her power to protect the camp. Bang! However, the flames were extremely fierce and melted the light barrier on the spot. With a loud bang, the heavenly fire smashed onto the ground. However, the scene of the raging flames spreading did not appear. Instead, the heavenly flames gradually shrank and dimmed. In the end, a giant bird with fiery red feathers was revealed. This was the fire phoenix that was being chased. Even its left wing was injured and it had lost the ability to fly. It struggled to get up and immediately began to run on the ground. However, before it could run out of the camp, a sharp cry came from above its head. It was the white-headed eagle that had caught up and swooped down. As it flew, it swept up a terrifyingly strong wind. Previously, the aftermath alone had put the camp in danger. Now that the white-headed eagle had targeted the fire phoenix and the shadow king, the danger it would bring was unimaginable. The strong wind in the air turned into sharp blades that were more powerful than low-grade doctrine artifacts, and they cut down rapidly. The sinful woman's eyelids twitched. If it really hit, the camp would be destroyed, and the members of the Cauldron would all be killed, even if they hid underground. Evil creature. The sinful woman pulled out the sinful sword and slashed at the white-headed eagle. The pitch-black sword radiance rose against the sky. However, compared to the attack of an ancient sage, it was too weak and was instantly destroyed by the strong wind. The white-headed eagle also noticed the person who had attacked it. Its eyes flashed with hostility, and it flapped its wings. Another strong wind came toward the sinful woman. Seeing this, Luzu was frightened and said hurriedly, "Retreat." The sinful woman moved a little but stopped again. If she retreated, all the members of the Cauldron would die, wouldn't they? If Suyu came back, how could she explain it to him? Her eyes were filled with determination. She stretched out her hand and tore off the black robe on her body, revealing her exquisite and beautiful face. She weaved signs with her hands, and with her, as the center, black lotuses appeared in the sky and on the ground. Those lotuses were her true form, and she wanted to use her true form to absorb all the attacks from the white-headed eagle. Luzu's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets, and he anxiously shouted, "Stop! You will be annihilated." Those attacks had long since exceeded the limits of what the sinful woman could bear. If she forced it, her true form would be destroyed, and she would completely disappear from the world. The sinful woman's expression was indifferent, and she said, "For Suyu, everything is possible, and there is no need to do anything." Luzu was shocked. The sinful woman was a strong person who intimidated the 8-star civilizations, but she would sacrifice herself for a man without hesitation. "I will leave the members of the Cauldron to you," the sinful woman said. She leaped up, and with the many black lotuses, she faced the strong wind. In her heart, she had already prepared herself to die. However, something strange happened. The white-headed eagle suddenly flapped its wings continuously, creating several strong winds that disturbed the airflow in the area. The strong wind that was about to descend upon the camp was also affected, and it deviated from its path, brushing past the top of the camp. The white-headed eagle was looking at the sinful woman with a fearful expression, as if it had discovered something extremely terrifying. The sinful woman's heart shook, and she said indifferently, "I am here, Scram." Chirp! The white-headed eagle immediately flapped its wings, fleeing madly, and disappeared into the horizon in the blink of an eye. The sinful woman touched her face and she sighed faintly. This face is really annoying. The white-headed eagle must have discovered that the sinful woman had the same appearance as Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower, and that was why it had mistaken her for Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower. She landed again with a complicated expression and appeared in front of the fire phoenix. Looking at the fire phoenix, whose eyes were also filled with fear, the sinful woman said indifferently, "You, leave too." Today, she had almost been implicated by the fire phoenix, and the entire cauldron had been destroyed. The fire phoenix nodded hurriedly, and she hurriedly ran away without looking back. The sinful woman looked at the damaged camp and calmly said, "Let's change the camp. It is not advisable to stay here for long." The news of her appearance here would soon be spread by the two demon clans. If there were no accidents, many strong people would arrive in the next few hours. That would attract a lot of unnecessary trouble. Chapter 2983. 3 days later, in a remote and desolate land, the sinful woman surveyed the surroundings. She felt that this was a suitable place to set up camp. Just as she was about to give an order, she suddenly looked up at the sky. But this time, there was no worry in her eyes. Instead, there was excitement in her eyes. It was because Suyu had come. Crash! Suyu and the other three landed in front of the cauldrons. Looking at the cauldrons that had just arrived, Suyu was surprised. "You haven't set up camp yet?" The sinful woman shook her head and briefly explained the situation to him. Hearing this, Suyu didn't mind. "All right, let me introduce them to you. They're all my friends." The sinful woman looked at them one by one. When she saw Su-kai-er, she was startled. Although she had never seen Su-kai-er before, she was surprised to see that Su-kai-er's face had 70% of Qin Xian'er's charm. "You are Xiajingyu?" Su-kai-er's eyes widened as she sized up the sinful woman. She then said excitedly, "I heard from my mother that there is an aunt called Xiajingyu. She is my father's confidant." Su-kai-er had seen Xiajingyu's portrait at Qin Xian'er's place, and she had been amazed by her beauty. "Wow, she really deserves to be my father's confidant. She is really beautiful." Su-kai-er's face was filled with envy. The sinful woman looked at Suyu in surprise. "Why didn't Suyu and I acknowledge each other?" "Kair, it's not good for you to speak ill of your father behind his back," Suyu said. Su-kai-er curled her lips. "That's right. My father has many women around him. My mother told me that there are many people who like him, and they can fill up a small civilization. Every time he goes out, there are always one or two new women around him, or even a bunch of them." The sinful woman looked at Suyu. She wanted to laugh, but she couldn't. The corners of Suyu's mouth twitched, and he felt embarrassed. He had an urge to strangle his daughter, as she had dared to speak ill of him behind his father's back. "However, no matter how many women there are, my father only has my mother in his heart." Su-kai-er, he threw a mischievous look at the evil girl. "So, Aunt Xiajingyu, you don't have a chance." The sinful girl felt warmth in her heart. She smiled faintly and stroked Xiajingyu's head. "I'm not Xiajingyu, but I won't steal your father. Don't worry." Su-kai-er was very easygoing. She intimately held her hand and said, "Well, isn't it good to be your confidant?" The sinful girl only smiled and said nothing. She wasn't Xiajingyu, but she knew that it wasn't Xiajingyu's wish to be her confidant. Suyu regretted bringing Su-kai-er back. He coughed dryly and said, "Since all you are here, you don't have to find a place to camp anymore. Follow me to the Sangtian Mountain to take over the territory of the aristocratic families." Several hours later, many living beings stood at the edge of a cliff and looked at the shocking scene in front of them. On the vast plain, a huge mountain rose from the ground and pierced the sky. The magnificence of the mountain covered a radius of more than 1 billion miles. Because of the existence of this mountain, the center of the entire cloud-desolate territory sank slightly. Therefore, a lot of spiritual energy and Taoist energy gathered around the Sangtian Mountain, creating countless excellent territories. Lu Zhu stared at the incomparably huge Sangtian Mountain and was extremely shocked. The prosperity of this mountain alone is comparable to our 8-star civilization, isn't it? Suyu nodded. Almost. The surging Taoist energy of the Songtian Mountain was enough to breed great saints, which was far better than the 8-star civilization. So you couldn't quite understand it. The 8-star civilization was so poor, and it wasn't even comparable to a small realm in the 9-star civilization. Why did they have to pursue and attack the 8-star civilization so fiercely and destroy it every era? That is our territory, isn't it? The sinful girl pointed to a clearly empty area halfway up the mountain. The rest of the areas had flags fluttering, indicating that someone had already occupied them. But only that place was lifeless. Although the Taoist energy was exceptionally rich, there was no vitality. Su Yu's eyes narrowed. Others couldn't see it, but he could see that there were some resentful spirits wandering back and forth in that area. It is indeed an ominous place, Su Yu said lightly. The Stone Man in the Stone Man Palace didn't seem to have good intentions. You guys stay here. I'll go take a look, Su Yu said. Bai Shui pondered for a moment. I'll go too, in case you encounter any danger that you can't solve. No matter what, she was the Heavenly Law Alliance master. She still had a little bit of faith in the 9-star civilization, so she could solve any trouble she encountered. The two of them leapt to the foot of the Songtian Mountain. Su Yu looked at the densely packed buildings on the mountain and the various territories that had been divided. He didn't recklessly fly through the air. Bai Shui secretly praised Su Yu. He was indeed cautious. She pointed to the crisscrossing ancient roads on the mountain. Every territory has a seal above it. If it's light, it'll restrict the air. If it's heavy, it'll hurt people. Therefore, we can't fly over those territories. If we want to fly, we can only go along these ancient roads. Su Yu nodded. Let's go. With a tap of his toes, he followed the ancient roads, twisting and turning, and came to the front of his territory. It was a rather vast area with a steep slope. There were hundreds of cities inside, as well as the mansion of a former aristocratic family. However, the entire area was dead silent. Even the ordinary cities were devoid of people. It was as if all living things had evaporated overnight. Su Yu narrowed his eyes and stared at the sky. Tens of thousands of resentful spirits were hovering above the area. Gu Taishu, could it be you? Su Yu's eyes flashed with a cold light. He took a step forward and was about to enter. Suddenly, a row of guards rushed over and shouted from afar, "Stop! Who allowed you to come here?" Those guards weren't ordinary guards either. They were all stone men. How could such an important place like the Songtian Mountain not be governed by stone men? Su Yu took out the land deed given to him by the stone men of the Hall of Stone Men. When the patrolling guards saw it, their faces relaxed. So, it was Lord Tuashin who ruled. The captain of the patrol team understood. He looked at Su Yu meaningfully. Did Lord Tuashin tell you about the dangers of this place? Su Yu said, No, I only heard that all the aristocratic families in this territory were slaughtered overnight. If that was all, Su Yu was confident that he could take over this place. Unexpectedly, the captain of the patrol team chuckled. Human, it seems that Lord Tuashin has a grudge against you. What do you mean? Su Yu thought for a moment. He took out a space storage device, which contained a lot of resources, and threw it to the captain. The captain took it and said with a faint smile, Since you were so sincere, let me give you a reminder. It wasn't just the aristocratic families that were wiped out overnight in this territory. A great saint strong man brought several ancient saints from his clan to this place to accept the mission. In the end, except for that great saint, the rest of them never returned. Hearing that, Su Yu's pupils shrank slightly. It was already so dangerous inside. Chapter 2984. Su Yu couldn't help but wonder if the person inside was really Gu Taishu. It had only been a year, and his cultivation had already reached a level where he could compete with a great saint. All right, thank you for telling me. Su Yu cupped his fists. The stone man chuckled. Anyway, I advise you to leave as soon as possible, especially at night. The stone man looked at the sky meaningfully. A mass of dark clouds obscured the moon, making the world even darker. A hint of fear appeared in the stone men's eyes. Let's go. They left first, not daring to stay a moment longer. Su Yu watched them leave. Only then did he realize that the nearby territories were gradually releasing powerful defensive spells, as if guarding against something dangerous. Bai Shui hugged her arms and shivered. What kind of territory did you choose? It sounds like it's going to kill someone. Suyu narrowed his eyes and stared at the vast territory. Wrong. It should be that we're here for this ghost's orders. Clang. Suyu took a step forward and kicked open the cobweb-covered door. A gust of cold air rushed out. There was obviously a cold and gloomy air current lingering in the area around the territory. Hey, do you really want to go in? Bai Shui was quite resistant, even regretting accompanying Suyu. Suyu's mouth twitched. You're a great saint. Why are you afraid? Bai Shui muttered. Of course I'm afraid. Who knows what's inside? While she was muttering, Suyu had already fearlessly stepped into the territory. Woo woo woo. As soon as he entered, he could hear the faint cries of ghosts lingering in his ears. The voice was sometimes near, sometimes far, sometimes near. One moment, it seemed to come from the horizon, and the next moment, it seemed to come from behind. Let's go. This is definitely a haunted house. The sound of a ghost wailing rang out in Bai Shui's ears without warning. She screamed in fright and hugged Suyu's arm tightly. Suyu was unfazed. He scanned the surroundings with his soul eyes. After a long time, he slowly nodded. This place is indeed a haunted house. He was a little surprised. Gu Taishu's nine spirits body was not a cold technique, so it shouldn't have created such a sinister environment. This place was extremely similar to the land of ghost cultivators. Let's go and take a look at the former owner's mansion. If they wanted to find the culprit, they had to pass through that place. Bai Shui's intestines turned green with regret. How unlucky can I be to meet you? Ever since I met you, nothing good has happened. Suyu sped towards the mansion. Bai Shui looked left and right, suddenly feeling a breath of cold air on the back of her neck. She got goosebumps and screamed as she rushed over to hug Suyu's arm. As Suyu passed by, the ordinary cities along the way fell into a deathly silence. The cities were all deserted. Weeds grew, houses collapsed, and mottled marks crawled all over the buildings. It was hard to believe that this place had only been abandoned for a few months. It looked as if no one had lived in it for hundreds of years. It was extremely gloomy. The two of them walked like this. In this boundless territory, only the two of them were alive. Let's go back. Don't go any further. It's even more sinister ahead. The two of them stopped by a river. Beyond the river was a pitch-black forest. The leafless forest was like a monster bearing its fangs and claws, waiting for the living to enter. Air currents flowed in the pitch-black forest, as if there was something moving within. Suddenly, Bai Shui's pupils dilated. There was a translucent, half-tangible woman in white, her hair disheveled, flashing past the forest. Then, the bone-chilling sound of a woman crying could be heard from within the forest. Accompany me. Who? Accompany me. Bai Shui's blood flowed faster, her fingers grabbing on Suyu's arm, digging into his flesh. Her eyes widened as she stammered, "There's a ghost." Her teeth were chattering. Suyu felt his scalp go numb. He had thought that the woman had been an illusion. His soul eyes could not detect any soul ripples. Even Bai Shui could see it. Suyu's muscles were a little stiff. This place was indeed a little sinister. Demons and monsters. Suyu forced himself to remain calm. Since he had entered, how could he leave empty-handed? He took out the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations and slashed at the pitch-black forest. Whoosh! The great scythe of 10,000 tribulations released a terrifying aura that swept across in an arc, slicing a large patch of the forest in half. It was a shocking sight to behold. The commotion caused by the scythe drowned out the woman's cries. Bai Shui felt a little more at ease, lifting her gaze to look at the forest. She had thought that her gaze would be able to see through the forest after it had been flattened. But there was still a tree standing within the forest. No, that was not a tree. It was a pitch-black giant. Bai Shui screamed again, closing her eyes in fear. Suyu growled, "Don't scream, shut up." He stared at the giant, flicking his finger. A beam of light shot out, illuminating the giant. Bai Shui opened her eyes a little, using the light to look. She let out a sigh of relief, patting her chest. So if it's a statue, it was a giant black Buddha statue, hidden by a group of tall trees. That scared me. Bai Shui relaxed. But Suyu took a step back, his expression serious. Something's not right. How powerful was a strike from the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations? Even a great saint would be killed if he did not defend himself. But how could the statue block the attack of the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations? There was something wrong with the statue. As expected, with a creaking sound, the statue's eyes opened. A pair of scarlet eyes glowed coldly in the night sky. The Buddha's mouth slowly opened, revealing a mouth full of sharp fangs. Putrid saliva dripped from the fangs. Accompany me, all of you accompany me. The black statue's voice grew shriller and shriller. Then, he took big strides and chased after them. Come and accompany me. Bai Shui's body went limp with fear. She could not use her great saint abilities. Suyu had goosebumps all over, but he could only endure it. Die! This time, Suyu used his full strength, swinging the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations. This sweep was twice as powerful as the previous one. The huge arc passed through the statue's waist, and with a crisp crack, the statue broke into two pieces. The upper half of its body flew tens of thousands of feet, arriving in front of Suyu and the others. Chapter 2985. Bai Shui's legs trembled in fear. In this moment of danger, he instinctively took out all his Tao artifacts, domains, and divine techniques, including the 10,000 hammer formation. Rumble. The hundreds of hammers smashed the statue into smithereens, leaving only the statue's screams echoing in the silence. Only then did Bai Shui manage to stand up, her face still pale. It's over. Suyu swallowed a mouthful of saliva. What's going on with this place? He nodded. It should be over. But just as he finished speaking, the ghostly wails came again. It was extremely mournful, making one's hair stand on end. My child, you died so tragically. Suyu's muscles tensed up again. Bai Shui's fingers couldn't even reach him. The two of them scanned their surroundings, trying to find the source of the sound. Suddenly, Bai Shui looked toward the forest in fear, tugging at Suyu's clothes. That there, look. Suyu followed her gaze, his pupils dilating. The tree that had been cut in half was now growing rapidly, and each branch was twisting like a long snake. At the same time, the entire forest began to shake. Cracks crisscrossed densely in the vicinity. Give me back my child! Give me back my child! This time, they finally heard where the woman's voice came from. It came from underground. Rumble. The forest suddenly rose into the air. No, more accurately, something huge was crawling out of the ground beneath the forest. Suyu and Bai Shui's eyes reflected the chilling scene at the same time. A head slowly rose from the ground. The head was enormous, covering the entire ground beneath the forest. It was impossible to see the end of the head. Its eyes were tightly shut. The face that was supposed to be a classic beauty was as pale as paper, and its mouth was so red it looked as if it had been dyed with blood. The endless forest. No, it was not the forest, but the head's long hair. It gently fell down, covering half its face. At the neck of the head, there were two disproportionately small feet supporting the huge body. What is that? Bai Shui's teeth chattered, her body sticking to Suyu's. She wished she could burrow into Suyu's body to hide. Suyu was also shocked as he looked at the monster that he had never seen before. In his life, he had seen all kinds of strange things, but he had never seen such a strange creature with a head. I don't know, Suyu said seriously. However, no matter what it was, he would kill it first. He didn't think that this thing had any goodwill towards him. The scythe of myriad tribulations appeared again and launched a vicious attack at the headless woman. The terrifying arc swept towards the head with an unstoppable force. At this moment, the tightly shut eyes of the head suddenly opened without any warning, revealing a pair of pale, pupilless eyes. It was a frightening sight to behold. Being stared at by those eyes, Suyu's heart skipped a beat. It was obvious that he was frightened. Bai Shui let out a shrill scream, hiding behind Suyu, not daring to look. Suyu clenched his teeth and suppressed the fear in his heart as he waved the great sickle of 10,000 calamity once again. However, The arc of the great sickle of 10,000 calamity shattered into a current of air the moment the eyes of the head opened. Then, under the gaze of the woman, it reformed into a hideous ghost head and charged towards the second arc of the great sickle of 10,000 calamity. Bang! The collision between the two dissipated immediately, not causing any harm to the head of the woman. No, to be precise, Suyu was at a slight disadvantage. The great sickle of 10,000 calamity was a powerful treasure, yet the other party could dissolve it with a single look. Suyu was starting to wonder how the great saints who had entered before had managed to escape successfully. "Give me back my child! Give me back my child!" The head roared with a grin. Its seemingly short legs were moving rapidly, dragging the huge head along as it charged forward. It was as if a giant mountain was chasing after them. Suyu's heart thumped wildly, and he fled immediately. His heart was filled with shock. What the hell was this thing? However, the speed of the head was much faster than he had imagined. He had not escaped far before the other party caught up. Suyu looked back and saw a giant head that blotted out the sky above him, looking down at him. Its pale eyes stared straight at Suyu, and a shrill cry came from its rosy mouth. "Give me back my child!" It opened its mouth, and its entire head swooped down, intending to swallow Suyu and Bai Shui together. How could Suyu still dare to hesitate? Seeing the stench approaching, Suyu decisively took out the absolute heaven sword and unsheathed it. Destroy! Boom! As if the heavens and earth were being split apart, a cold light that illuminated the world flashed across the earth, piercing through the heavens. Ah! The left eye of the head of the woman was blinded by the absolute heaven sword. But that was all. The head of the woman screamed in pain, her feet constantly stomping on the ground, shaking the heavens and the earth. Suyu's heart sank. The blow of the absolute heaven sword, which had consumed 90% of its power, had not been able to kill the woman. But the more dangerous it was, the more Suyu's fighting spirit was stimulated. He remembered that his 8 great domains had changed, and with a thought, the 8 great domains appeared around him. With a grasp of his palm, the 8 great domains condensed into a spear, and he threw it at the other eye of the woman. Clang! However, the surface of the woman's other pale eye seemed to be covered by a layer of armor. The spear struck it, creating violent sparks and the sound of metal rubbing against metal. Suyu clenched his teeth and leaped forward. At the same time, he used the power of the holy body and the power of the emperor, stepping on the end of the spear. The two shocking powers allowed the spear to pierce through the defense of the eye, piercing through the eyeball. Ah! The head of the monster let out another shrill cry, and the black hair on its head turned into thousands of tentacles, whipping towards Suyu. Suyu immediately retreated, retreating to a safe place. The tentacles pulled out the spear, bringing with it a putrid stench of black blood. Even so, this eye was still injured, and it could only see Suyu's figure vaguely, while the other eye was completely blind. "I will eat you! I will eat you!" The head rushed towards Suyu quickly, full of resentment. Suyu looked at it and slightly clenched his teeth. He did not believe that his territory would be occupied by a ghost head who did not know anything. "Go to hell!" Suyu leaped, instantly displaying hundreds of ancestral techniques. Every one of them was an extremely sharp attack ancestral technique. The ancestral techniques he had learned from the ultimate divine monument were all condensed at this moment, attacking the ghost head together. Puff! Chapter 2986. Suyu's heart sank. The absolute heaven sword had already used up most of his energy. If this continued, not only would it not help, but it would also put himself in danger. However, this ghost head was too strange and frightening. It clearly had no cultivation, but its body was invulnerable. Apart from its eyes, which were slightly weaker, there was almost no way to attack it. Suddenly, Suyu's eyes caught a glimpse of the ghost head's strange behavior. After being attacked, the ghost head squatted on the ground and retracted its legs into its head. When the hundreds of remnant scars had all stopped, the ghost head's legs stretched out again. So you noticed that something was amiss. He rolled his eyes and calmly used another ancestral technique. Sure enough, before it could be used, its legs retracted slightly. After confirming that Su Yu's attack was quite weak, it stretched out again. Legs! Su Yu immediately grabbed the great sickle of 10,000 calamity and slashed at the ghost head's remaining eyes. The ghost head screeched, its long black hair dancing like a long snake, blocking the attack of the great sickle of 10,000 calamity. Unexpectedly, the great sickle of 10,000 calamity contained a powerful space yuan realm. Just as the attack was about to reach the ghost head's hair, it disappeared into thin air and reappeared in front of its legs. Its legs could not retract in time, and were pierced by the great sickle of 10,000 calamity. Crack! With a crisp sound, the legs, which were weaker than any other part of its body, were cut off in an instant. The ghost head lost its support and immediately rolled on the ground, howling in pain. Its round head kept rolling on the ground, and green liquid kept spurting out from its neck where its legs were. The ghost head's howls grew weaker and weaker as the green liquid spurted out. In the end, the ghost head lay motionless on the ground, its remaining eyes filled with a deathly stillness. The ghost head, which was strong enough to withstand a blow from the absolute heaven sword, was dead, just like that. Su Yu held the great sickle of 10,000 calamity and looked at the dead ghost head in disbelief. It died so easily. He had expected its legs to be its weakness, but he had not expected it to be its fatal weakness. However, the crisis had finally been resolved. He had used up everything he had to deal with this ghost head. He was so weak that he did not even have the strength to hold the great sickle of 10,000 calamity. He fell to the ground, panting. "Don't you find it hard to believe?" Bai Shui suddenly asked from behind. Su Yu replied without turning his head, "That's right." However, as soon as he spoke, he felt that something wasn't right. That wasn't White Snow's voice, it was just similar. At the same time, a pair of ice-cold and clammy arms wrapped around Su Yu tightly from behind. Looking at the white snow on Su Yu's back, how was that white snow? An old woman, who was as short as a baby, had a head full of white hair and a face full of wrinkles, was lying on Su Yu's back. She opened her mouth, which was disproportionate to her face, and bit down on Su Yu's neck. At this moment, Su Yu's whole body was devoid of energy, and he didn't even have the strength to stand up. So, how could he contend against the old woman, who had suddenly appeared? No, it was the evil spirit that had suddenly transformed from Snow White into a white-haired old woman. Just as Su Yu was on his own, a cold smile suddenly appeared on Su Yu's lips. It was clear that he couldn't move anymore, but he held the scythe of 10,000 tribulations and casually stabbed it behind him. Ah! An ear-piercing shriek came from behind him. The old woman had been pierced by the sharp blade of the scythe of 10,000 tribulations. Su Yu stood up as if nothing had happened, raising the scythe of 10,000 tribulations. He looked at the white-haired old woman who was struggling on the scythe. "I've waited a long time for you," he said. The white-haired old woman shrieked. "You knew I wasn't your companion?" It turned out that the one who had been by Su Yu's side from the beginning was not Snow White, but this white-haired old woman. Su Yu raised her high, coldly saying, "Snow White is not a little girl. In a sense, she is an old woman older than you." But along the way, Snow White was like a little girl who had just seen the world, either screaming or hugging Su Yu's arm without letting go. That was definitely not Snow White's style. So, from the beginning, Su Yu had noticed Snow White's abnormality. And when he and the ghost head had reached the climax of the battle, Snow White had not made a single sound. Even though Su Yu had been fully focused on the battle with the ghost head, his attention had always been on Snow White. So, after the battle had ended, Su Yu had deliberately pretended to be exhausted to lure the fake Snow White into revealing her identity. As expected, the other party had immediately fallen for it. "Despicable, but don't even think of occupying this territory," the white-haired old woman scolded. Su Yu laughed coldly, shaking his head. "Do you still want to continue lying?" He raised the great sickle of 10,000 calamity and smashed it into the ground. Thump! The white-haired old woman was smashed into a blur, and a large amount of white smoke emanated from her body. Suyu calmly said, I have to admit that your illusionary techniques have reached an extreme level. Unfortunately, you have met me. So, everything they had encountered along the way had been illusionary techniques. As he spoke, Suyu stomped his foot, and the white-haired old woman completely turned into a cloud of white smoke. The giant ghost head also quickly turned into a huge cloud of smoke, enveloping the surroundings. When the smoke dissipated, the scene in front of Suyu's eyes was unbelievable. He saw Suyu and Snow White standing side by side at the entrance of the territory. The two of them maintained their posture as they entered, and their feet landed on the ground. Suyu's spirit was slightly shaken. In the instant that his foot landed, they had experienced such a long, illusionary technique. Looking at Snow White, her footsteps shook violently, waking her from the illusionary technique. Her eyes were still filled with confusion. Where's the ghost head? Snow White was fighting the ghost head in the illusionary technique, but suddenly, the white smoke filled the air. When the white smoke dissipated, this was the scene in front of them. Suyu did not reply, but instead fixed his gaze on the center of the territory. There, a ball of intense soul energy was spreading in all directions. Found you, Suyu said as he leaped into the air and entered the territory. The real territory was not as sinister as the illusionary technique. Instead, it was full of Taoist energy, filled with a dense and peaceful aura. Snow White followed closely behind, following Suyu to the center of the territory, where the ancient saint's manor used to be. Snow White was dumbfounded. The manor was filled with Buddhist light and Sanskrit sounds. Smoke and fire rose into the air, and the melodious chimes of an ancient bell could be heard. What exactly did we encounter? Snow White's face was filled with disbelief. In one moment, it was the sinister and creepy ghost prison, and in the next moment, it was the holy land of bliss. How could two completely opposite things exist in the same place? Only Suyu stared at the Buddhist light that filled the sky, and combined it with the sinister ghost prison that had just appeared. The image of a person he had long forgotten surfaced in his mind. Chapter 29:87. He had only encountered a combination of the ghost path and the Buddhist path once in his life. That was Shanggu, who had left with Xia Jingyu, a woman who had combined the ghost path and the Buddhist path. As soon as Suyu stepped into the mansion, he saw an illusory Buddha statue, which was illuminated by the Buddha's light, sitting cross-legged in the mansion. Around the Buddha statue were many devotees who were sitting cross-legged. No, they were not devotees. They were people who had lost their sense of self and surrounded the Buddha statue. The energy in their bodies was constantly being channeled into the Buddha statue. The Buddha statue released a brilliant light that illuminated the surroundings. On the giant palm of the Buddha statue was a little girl in a purple dress. She looked to be only 12 or 13 years old. Her eyes were closed, as if she had fallen into a coma. When he saw the girl's face clearly, Suyu's mind buzzed. It was really Shanggu. He took a step forward, but suddenly the devotees sitting around the Buddha statue stood up. Among them, a few had reached the level of ancient saints. They took the initiative to attack Suyu, as if they were protecting the little girl. Looking at their eyes, he saw that they were all in a daze. They were obviously being controlled. Go away. Suyu flicked his finger. The evolved 8 great domains swept out in all directions, sending the crowd flying. Suyu took a step forward and appeared beside Shanggu. Looking closely, he saw that there was a crack in the middle of Shang-Ji's brows that looked like the Milky Way. Traces of fluorescence were spreading outwards. It was a sign that her soul had been severely injured and was collapsing. Could it be the effect of my breaking the illusion? Suyu guessed. Illusion techniques were secret techniques that required soul energy to control. Once the illusion was broken, it would often affect the soul. Moreover, the more powerful the illusion technique, the more soul energy it required. The illusion technique that Shanggu had used before was enough to threaten a great saint. One could imagine the amount of soul energy she had used. Now that it had been broken by Suyu, her soul had naturally been severely injured. Her soul continued to collapse. If this continued, it would not be long before she was completely destroyed. Suyu immediately took out an elixir that could restore the soul and stuffed it in her mouth. At the same time, he used the Yuan level soul domain to delay the collapse of her soul. 2 hours later, Shang Ji's soul stabilized under the effects of the two elements. Her consciousness gradually recovered, and she slowly opened her eyes. The moment he opened his eyes, he immediately struggled to sit up. However, just as he moved violently, his head began to hurt again, and he collapsed once more. At this moment, a hand reached over and stroked his head. "How long has it been since we last met?" 100 years? Shungu came to her senses abruptly, and her eyes turned to look at Suyu. His silver hair and familiar face were reflected in her widened eyes. Master? Shungu sat up and exclaimed in shock. At this moment, she was as shocked as she could be. Her small mouth opened so wide that it could fit an egg in it. Her round eyes stared at Suyu as if she had seen a ghost. Suyu looked at the sky and said leisurely, "I haven't seen you for more than 100 years, but you're still the same. You haven't changed at all." After a pause, he added, "I mean your appearance." Shengji's shocked heart took a long time to calm down. Her eyes were finally filled with ecstasy, and she leaped into Suyu's embrace. Suyu felt warm in his heart. Time passes, but there are always some things that are not buried by the dust of time, silently flickering with a lonely luster in the silent, fleeting years. Until their fates met once again, Suyu extended his hand and stroked her head. His heart was filled with warmth. He had never dreamed that he would meet Shungu one day. It seemed like the world was not vast, time was not far away, and fate was not turbulent. After crying in Suyu's embrace for a long time, Shungu raised her eyes and looked at Suyu. She said, "I feel like you have changed a lot. Is that so?" Suyu touched his face, but he did not notice any changes in himself. Shungu extended her hand and pointed at his chest. "It's here. It's inside. You are more gentle than before, and you seem more like a mortal." Shungu thought for a long time before giving an evaluation of a mortal. In Shang Ji's memory, Suyu was always filled with bitterness and hatred. Although he did not show it, his heart was filled with unbearable pressure. Now that they had not met for 100 years, she felt that he was different. Suyu smiled. How could it not change? Time had changed, and he was already a father. He had lost his wife and many friends, so how could he still be as frivolous as before? "Why are you here?" Suyu asked curiously. "Aren't you with Xia Jingyu?" Shang Ji's tears, which had just been held back, fell down again. "It's a long story. I did not have a good time in the 9-star civilization. Although my cultivation improved a lot, it was not as carefree and happy as it was in the small 9-jade spiritual pearl." Suyu listened quietly to her talk about her many years of experience, and he could not help but feel emotional. It turned out that Shungu had accompanied Xia Jingyu and reached the end of the 8-star civilization, the Tao Abyss. A great power from the goddess family broke through the gap between the two worlds and brought them back to the goddess clan. Xia Jingyu was naturally regarded as the young master of the goddess clan, but Shungu, who was a servant, did not receive such good treatment. Because she cultivated the ghost and Buddha as one, she was regarded as an ominous being by the goddess clan and was banished from the goddess clan. Then, she was stranded in the 9-star civilization. With her weak cultivation, how could she not be bullied everywhere? Fortunately, she was lucky enough to come to the Ghost Cave, one of the 24 caves under the command of the Mirror Flower Heavenly Prince. In this place, her ghost and Buddha as one physique was particularly valued by an elder in the Ghost Cave, who regarded her as his successor. That elder once had a daughter who also possessed the ghost and Buddha as one. But in the end, she could not survive the 2 heavenly tribulations and died in the tribulation. When he found out that Shungu also had a unique physique that was hard to come by in 10,000 years, he specially took her in as a disciple and trained her like a daughter. Shungu was able to stay in the Ghost Cave and enjoyed a peaceful life for 50 years. But 2 years ago, an accident happened. An indescribable giant dragon had attacked the Ghost Cave without warning, and his master had met with misfortune. Although the Ghost Cave recovered, Shungu, who had lost her master and had no background, could not stand firm in the ghost cave. In particular, Shungu was very likely to become the successor of a powerful ghost cultivator force in the ghost cave. Naturally, she was ostracized. Shungu asked for help from her master's old friend, but she was coldly rejected or ill-intentioned. In the end, Shungu was regarded as a thorn in the side of a vicious successor, who sent people to secretly hunt her down. In desperation, Shungu escaped from the ghost cave. She escaped for 2 years. I've already stayed here for half a year. I believe that enemy already knows that I'm coming. I can't stay here any longer. Shungu said, I wanted to leave in 10 days, but who knew that you would come here? Also, I couldn't sense that it was you at all. Chapter 2988. So you cannot help but sigh. From her words, it was not difficult to understand that Xia Jingyu was merely a symbol of status within the goddess clan. She had no freedom. She could not even protect her personal servant and was chased away. Sheng Ji's life had been full of misfortune. She had finally found a teacher who treated her sincerely, but was suddenly killed by the Ninth Realm. In the end, she had been forced to flee for her life. In the end, even when she had finally reunited with Su Yu, her soul had been injured by him due to a misunderstanding. She was truly pitiful, but luckily they had still met. Follow me from now on, Su Yu said, if you are still willing. Back then, the two of them had become master and servant because of some grudge. In the 100 years that followed, the so-called grudge had long been resolved. Shungu had long since removed the mark in her body, and she had such a powerful environment that she could almost rival great saints. She might not be willing to follow Su Yu anymore. Master, are you still willing to take me in? Shungu was excited. Having stayed in the 9-star civilization for 100 years, Shungu deeply understood the cruelty of this place. In comparison, the Juzhou continent had been a warm home. How could she not be excited to meet an old friend who was willing to take her in? But Shungu immediately shook her head. No, I cannot implicate you, master. She had just realized that she was being hunted, and it was not an ordinary force that was pursuing her. It was the Colossus that ruled the entire ghost cave. Although that force was also at the Great Saint level, it was the pinnacle of the ghost cave, ranked in the top 20 of the Saint clan. It was extremely terrifying. So you patted her head and smiled. Just because you are willing to call me master if I don't help you, who will? Furthermore, you might not implicate me. Shungu was about to continue dissuading him when a faint voice traveled over. I thought you had found a treasure, but it turns out you were flirting with a little girl. Bai Shui crossed her arms in front of her chest, both angry and amused at the same time. She had accompanied Su Yu on this dangerous adventure, but Su Yu was here hugging another girl. This was too much. How can you speak to master like that? Shungu was immediately displeased. She glared at him, a ball of evil mist appearing above her head. Be careful, or I will send you back into the illusion. Only then did Bai Shui realize that the dangerous illusion was created by the little girl in front of her. He could not help but feel shocked, but he remained calm on the surface. What's so scary about an illusion? Didn't I still make it through? Humph. Shungu smiled faintly. Isn't it scary? Then why are you calling for your mother in the illusion? So you looked at Bai Shui in shock. Bai Shui's face turned red as she argued. Who? Who shouted? Shungu giggled and said, Really? At that time, who was the one who was so scared that he shouted for his mother to save me when an evil spirit was licking his face? You are spouting nonsense. Bai Shui's face turned even redder. You must not believe her. You must not. Shungu added, Oh, by the way, she seemed to be cursing a bastard called Ryu. Who is that Ryu? Su Yu paused for a moment, then asked, What did she curse about Ryu? She cursed that he saw her naked body, but he didn't take responsibility for her. Shungu covered her mouth as she giggled. Who is that Ryu? Why does it sound like a woman's name? Su Yu coughed, hurriedly saying, Children shouldn't ask so many questions. Bai Shui's face was as red as a veil, and she wanted to find a hole to hide in. So this lass had seen everything she had done in the illusion. Stupid lass. Bai Shui clenched her teeth. Shungu looked Bai Shui up and down, unwilling to admit defeat. Hee, aren't you a lass as well? Both of them were quite old, but their figures were like girls. "Do you think I won't strangle you to death?" Bai Shui clenched her fists. She had truly embarrassed herself today. Shingo waved her fists. "Come on, I'm not afraid of you." Seeing the two lasses about to fight, Suyu hurriedly said, "Both of you, stop. Since it was all a misunderstanding, let's forget about it." Only then did the two of them stop, but they both grunted and turned their backs, not looking at each other. Suyu was speechless. He looked at the scattered experts from all sides and said, "Did they all fall into an illusion and fall under your control?" Shingo pouted and said, "That's right. They insisted on barging in, and I had no choice but to capture them." Suyu's expression changed slightly. "What about the original owner of this house?" Shingo spread out her hands. "How would I know? When I came, this place was empty." "What? The disappearance of the original owner of this place had nothing to do with Shingo?" Then, the rumor that someone had seen 9 ferocious demonic beasts appear in the sky was not Shingo's doing. His gaze sharpened, and he used his soul eyes to look in all directions, probing millions of feet underground. But there was no sign of anyone else. "Who are you looking for?" Shingo asked. Suyu said seriously, "Gu Taishu." "What, he's not dead? And he came to a 9-star civilization?" As Suyu's first follower, how could she not know who Gu Taishu was? Suyu nodded seriously. "I'm sure that Gu Taishu has been here, and he has either captured or killed all the people in this house. But if Gu Taishu wanted to train, why did he only target this big family and let the rest go? This doesn't seem like Gu Taishu's style." Based on his understanding of Gu Taishu over the years, once he started to devour living creatures to train, he would definitely wipe out all the living creatures in that area, leaving no one alive. It was rare for only one family to be wiped out and the rest to be spared. "Is there anything special about the owner of this place?" Suyu looked at the house again. It had been empty for a long time, and it looked desolate. His eyes were fixed on a side hall, and the words "Ancestral Hall" were left on the board. He entered in a flash, and what entered his eyes were densely packed memorial tablets, which were carved with the memorial tablets of the ancestors of each family in the house. The Huang clan. Suyu glanced at it briefly and didn't find anything unusual. Its original ancestor was Huang Daofa, and there was nothing special about it. Shinga hurried over, and looking at the memorial tablets, she said, "The Huang clan? There's nothing special about it." Daoling ran. Suyu looked in the direction of her gaze and saw that among the many memorial tablets, there was a special one. The rest of the memorial tablets were all of the surname Huang, and they were all men. Only Daoling Ran was the only one with a different surname, and she was a woman. Then he looked at the memorial tablet, which read, "The 180th family master, Huang Tianmu's wife." Suyu was puzzled, and he asked, "Is this person special?" Looking at the arrangement of the memorial tablets in the ancestral hall, only male family members were allowed to enter the hall, and this woman was an exception. Shinga's face was full of surprise. "I don't know if she's special, but have you ever seen the surname Dao before?" Suyu was stunned. There are thousands of surnames in the world, and he had seen countless of them. Chapter 2989. Dao was the Dao of the great path of heaven and earth. Who could take this as their surname? Didn't that mean that the person with this surname stood above all the paths of heaven and earth? Anyone who dared to take Dao as their surname would suffer the wrath of all the paths and be destroyed. Those who could take this surname for so long must be extraordinary. This Dao Lingran must have an extraordinary background. "You know about it?" Suyu asked. Shungun nodded lightly. "Yes, I heard my master mention it when I was in the ghost cave. He obtained an ancient, incomplete book called the Desolate Ocean Scripture. It recorded that there used to be an ancient surname of Dao in this world. Its origin is untraceable. It has existed since the day the great beginning realm existed, and it existed at the same time as the Taotai ancestor. The Desolate Ocean Scripture said that this was the first surname in the world." Suyu's heart was in turmoil as he listened. There were many secrets about the ancient times, but Suyu still didn't understand how this had anything to do with Gu Taishu taking away all the people of this family. Shunga looked at Suyu and said, "Master, Have you ever heard of an almighty being who passed away in this world? His name was the Taichu Pathmaster. Su Yu's heart skipped a beat. You know about it too? Shunga nodded and said, I heard my master say that the surname of the Taichu Taoist master is Dao. What? The common surname of the Taichu Taoist master was the earliest surname in this world? Suddenly, Su Yu looked at Dao Lingran and was horrified. She is the descendant of the Taichu Taoist master? Shunga shook her head. To be precise, she is his family, because the Taichu Taoist master came from the Dao family. Su Yu squinted. So the purpose of Gu Taishu taking Dao Lingran was to extract the bloodline of the Dao family? As the oldest bloodline in the world, the Dao family could give birth to a mighty being like the Taichu Taoist master. One could only imagine how special its bloodline was. Gu Taishu must have known something, so he came to take away Dao Lingran's descendant, intending to extract the bloodline power of the Dao family from her. Su Yu came before the memorial tablet and searched it with his soul eyes. Suddenly, he found a secret compartment. When he opened it, he found a genealogy book which introduced the ancestor's life in detail. After searching, he found a record of Dao Lingran. It was said that Dao Lingran was a woman with an ordinary cultivation base. There was nothing special about her throughout her life. Only after she died did she turn into a beam of light and return to the heavens, not leaving behind any remains. Gu Taishu was afraid that his hope would be dashed. Gu Taishu was afraid that his hopes would be dashed. If they were just ordinary clansmen, what kind of powerful bloodline power could their descendants have? However, Su was slightly curious as to whether the Dao family still existed. If she existed, where was she now? Shi Yu family Gu. Dao she was Yu Dao Lingran Su Gu. Fine, since Gu Taishu has already left. Then he can only count himself lucky. Su Yu didn't have the time to chase after Gu Taishu, so he could only give up. Dao Dao Yu, and with Ling Ru, Dao, and Dao Dao and Dao Dao Dao. Yu, Sheng Sheng's Dao Dao, Dao 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 Dao, Bai Dao Dao Dao, Dao Bai Bai Dao, Dao, Bai Yin Dao Bai Dao Xia Yu Dao, Long and Lin Dao Lin Yu Yu, Ayang Yu Shui Dao Yu Bai Shiro gave the memorial tablet a meaningful look, nodded, and left. Before long, Su Ke, the sinful lady, and the other members of the Cauldron arrived. Sinful lady, settle down all the members of the Cauldron, Su Yu ordered. After many twists and turns, the Cauldron finally found a place to rest and recuperate. All of you, guard the territory. Don't let any outsiders in. Sheng Ge commanded the ancient sage captives. Yes, the news of the territory being occupied spread like wildfire. Within a few days, it had spread all over the Tsangtian mountain. On the mountain, the three sacred clans were shocked. One of the sacred clans was surrounded by greenery. It was full of life. However, this sacred clan was extremely solemn. What do you think about the Huang family's territory being occupied? In the central area of the sacred clan, there were 10 hills surrounding it. 3 of the hills were empty, leaving only the other 7. An ancient sage was sitting cross-legged on each hill. The one who spoke was an ancient well surrounded by the 10 hills. A hoarse voice came from the well. Hearing this, the ancient sage on one of the hills said, "Since that place has been occupied, it means that the danger has passed. We should immediately send people to search for the 3 missing people." It turned out that this sacred clan was the Soulwood sacred clan who had broken into the Huang family and was frightened by Sheng Ji's illusion. The ancient sages who had entered with them were all captured by Sheng Ge. The great sage was so frightened that he fled in panic. He was severely injured in the dream. Until now, he was still recuperating in the ancient well of his family. Now that the Huang family's territory had been occupied by an external force, the Soulwood sacred clan became excited. That's right. It must have been the ancestor who scared the evil thing inside. An ancient sage said, that gave the external force the opportunity to take advantage of the situation. The Huang family's territory should be taken back. Many ancient sages requested to go to the Huang family's territory. The well was silent for a long time. Only he, who had been there and experienced the evil spirit's illusion, knew how terrifying that place was. Thinking back to the terrifying scenes in Illusion, he was still wary of that place. However, as the ancient sages had said, if even a second-rate force could occupy that place, it meant that the danger there had already passed. Very well, let's take action before the other two sacred clans notice. Voila! A ray of green light shot out from the well. A yellow-skinned old man wearing a green robe and a green hat appeared. He had already made up his mind to take back the Huang family's territory. However, for safety's sake, we still need to be prepared, he said cautiously. Immediately send out the clan's Dao treasure. Last time, it was because he didn't bring a Dao treasure with him that he ended up in such a sorry state. While the Soulwood Sacred Clan was preparing, a young man hurriedly returned and went straight to the core area. Greenwood greets the ancestor. The person who came was none other than Greenwood. He had been rushing non-stop from the Blood Mountain and had finally returned. Greenwood ancestor was surprised. Why are you back? Looking at the time, the fossils in the Blood Mountain shouldn't have come out yet, right? He was the one who had sent a message to Greenwood, asking him to go and investigate. In the end, before there were any results, Greenwood had already returned. Ancestor, something big happened. Greenwood hurriedly said. Chapter 2990. Qingmu, how does the forefather usually teach you juniors? The forefather reprimanded. Stay calm and deal with things calmly. Only then will you be able to deal with it. Why are you panicking right now? What a scandal. After being reprimanded, Qingmu could only obediently say, the forefather is right. Even though his heart was burning with anxiety, he could only force himself to remain calm. Seeing this, the forefather asked calmly, what is it? Speak. Qingmu didn't dare to be long-winded. He tried his best to remain calm and said, 2 great sages of the sword's sacred race have died. The forefather was originally calm, but his pupils constricted when he heard this. The ancient sages on the 7 hills were also shocked and stood up. It was obvious that they were shocked by this shocking news. The forefather couldn't suppress his shock and yelled, how did they die? Speak clearly. Qingmu looked up at the anxious forefather and muttered, didn't you say to stay calm? The forefather glared at him. What nonsense are you talking about? Hurry up and say it. What's wrong with being so slow? Qingmu secretly rolled his eyes and completely lost his temper. When he was anxious, the forefather said that it was not right. Now, as he wished, he was calm but was said to be slow. It really wasn't easy to be a junior. Ahem, forefather, this is what happened. Qingmu told the forefather everything that happened on Blood Mountain. Upon hearing those words, old ancestor Green Hat and the 7 ancient sages gasped in shock, especially the forefather. The 7 ancient sages probably didn't think that the 4th and 5th brothers of the Sword Sacred race were very strong, but as a great sage, how could the forefather not know what they were? It wasn't without reason that the Sword Sacred race was able to become the 3rd-ranked sacred race with 5 great sages. Anyone the 5 great sages in the Sword Sacred race was a super expert, and very few people of the same level could fight against them. Old Ancestor Green Hat had met Old 4th and Old 5th many years ago at a sacred clan gathering. At that time, there were 100 great sages present. When the 2 of them were sparring, the forefather watched from the side and remembered the result of the battle clearly. He knew that even if there were 3 of them combined, he still wouldn't be able to match up to Little 5 or Little 4. And that was under the condition that they did not use their clan protection Dao treasures. If they took out the famous EMO soul-suppressing bell and the black ape slave ring, the 10 green-hatted old ancestors would all die in their hands. It was not hard to imagine how terrifying the 2 of them were. But now, the 2 of them, who were as powerful as they were, had actually been killed by a mysterious black-robed man. How could this not terrify old ancestor Green Hat? Such a terrifying and tyrannical figure. Whoever provoked him would undoubtedly die. Who could it be? Do you have any idea? The 7 ancient sages gulped down a mouthful of saliva. Just the thought of killing 2 great sages of the famed Sword Saint tribe sent chills down their spines. If such a character found their soul, would Sacred Clan an eyesore? Wouldn't they be able to exterminate them with a wave of their hand? Old Ancestor Green Hat shook his head and said with a dignified expression, I've never heard of a super expert who uses a scythe and a sword. There were only so many great sages in a 9-star civilization, and he had seen most of them. However, the great sage expert that Qing Mu described was truly unheard of. However, no matter who it is, our Soulwood Sacred Clan did not provoke him. This is extremely fortunate, Old Ancestor Green Hat said with a sigh of relief. The way he looked at Qing Mu became much more pleasing to the eye, and he could not help but praise. Moreover, Qing Mu seems to have left a good impression on that super expert. The 7 ancient sages also heaved a sigh of relief. As a member of a cruel 9-star civilization, they had to be careful in everything they did. Too many glorious families have been destroyed in a single night because of carelessness. The Soulwood Sacred Clan could not afford to make such a mistake. Thinking up to there, their gazes toward Qing Mu became especially amiable. I've already said that Qing Mu is smart and intelligent. I've always felt that Qing Mu is an extremely capable junior. Ancestor, I suggest that Qing Mu be included in the list of juniors that we should focus on nurturing. Hearing this, Qing Mu was incomparably happy, and he could not stop smiling. Seniors, thank you for your praise. This junior must continue to work hard. Old Ancestor Green Hat smiled benevolently. Qing Mu indeed deserves to be rewarded. After thinking about it, Old Ancestor Green Hat said, How about this? We will first take back the Huang family's territory and then hand it over to Qing Mu to manage. Qing Mu was extremely happy. He was extremely grateful in his heart. Everything was given to him by that senior. Because they knew that this senior was heading to Songtian Mountain, the seniors wanted to curry favor with him, which was why they treated him so courteously. Otherwise, how could a clansman who had failed to establish a large family be nurtured? Not being treated coldly was already a blessing. All right, let's go. Old Ancestor Green had stood up and said, I will personally accompany you. In order to avoid any remaining dangers in the territory, it was better for him to personally make a trip. With him, one of the 3 great sages of Songtian Mountain present, he would be able to suppress the motley crew that had occupied the territory. Qing Mu hurriedly said, I am willing to contribute my meager strength. Ha, good. The children of the Soulwood Sacred Clan are brave and good at fighting. They will definitely have great achievements in the future. Old Ancestor Green Hat waved his arm and shouted, Let's go. The group of people immediately set off. Except for the 2 ancient sages who were guarding the family, the Old Ancestor and the 5 great sages all went forward. When they arrived at the Huang family's territory, the sinful lady led the members of the Cauldron and was cleaning the courtyard walls of the territory. This place had been vacant for a long time. The dust had been reduced, and the formation had been damaged. It needed to be cleaned up. Suddenly, the sinful lady sensed the arrival of strong men. When she looked back, she saw a great sage rushing over with 5 ancient sages. His expression was calm, without the slightest hint of fear. Even the 2 great sages of the famous Sword Sacred Clan had been killed by Su Yu, let alone the ordinary great sages of Songtian Mountain. Who are you? The sinful lady asked. Old Ancestor Green Hat's eyes were indifferent. He did not care about the sinful lady at all. Or rather, he did not care about the sinful lady at all. He looked around the Huang family's territory, and a trace of lingering fear flashed in his eyes. When he first broke into this place, he was attacked by nightmarish evil spirits. The memory was still fresh in his mind. You get lost. The 5 ancient sages who followed him did not care about the sinful lady at all. The sinful lady frowned and said calmly, I advise you to leave as soon as possible. We did not come here to fight with anyone. She was trying to dissuade them out of kindness. If they provoked Su Yu, none of them would be able to leave. A bunch of motley crew. Do you think that Songtian Mountain is a place where you deserve to come? One of the ancient sages scolded. Take your people and get lost. The sinful lady was indifferent. She shook her head and sighed. Then, she crushed the communication jade talisman to inform Su Yu to come and deal with it. A female ancient sage said with an indifferent look, You probably don't know who we are, do you? She took out a wooden token with the words Soul with Sacred Clan on it. Chapter 2991. The 4 words glittered in gold and were exceptionally dazzling. Especially the 2 words Sacred Clan. It was hard to ignore. In a vast cloud, desolate territory, there were only 3 sacred clans. The Soulwood Sacred Clan was one of them, but Sinful Girl saw it and didn't even frown. She just waved the communication jade talisman in her hand. It's too late. You should be here soon. Seeing that Sinful Girl was so stubborn, the female ancient saint said disappointedly, "Your reaction is really disappointing." As soon as she finished speaking, her eyes became extremely sharp, and she raised her finger to hit Sinful Girl. Even though Sinful Girl expected it, her cultivation was far from an ancient saint. How could she completely block it? Black lotuses bloomed around her, trying to absorb as much of the terrifying ancient saint's power as possible. However, the black lotuses could only absorb a limited amount. Most of the power rushed over and crushed the black lotuses. Luckily, the black lotuses bought some time for Sinful Girl to dodge. Her figure moved horizontally, trying to avoid all the attacks. But in the end, she only managed to avoid most of the power. There was still a portion of the power that hit her abdomen. Rip, Sinful Girl's black robe was completely torn apart, revealing her true appearance. A cold and beautiful face that could topple cities and countries appeared in front of everyone. Her appearance was breathtaking, causing everyone present to stare blankly. Even Patriarch Green Hat couldn't help but be attracted by her out of the corner of his eye and look over. However, when he saw that face clearly, Green Hat Ancestor trembled all over, and his face turned pale with fright. He even exclaimed, "Mirror, Mirror Flower Heavenly Prince?" Perhaps other sacred clans might not recognize Mirror Flower Heaven's true appearance, but there was no reason that no one in the Cloud Desolate Territory wouldn't recognize her, because the Cloud Desolate Territory was under Mirror Flower Heaven's rule. The other ancient sages were also taken aback. But then, the old ancestor in Green Hat realized something and said, "Wait, you can't be Mirror Flower Heaven. Mirror Flower Heaven had died long ago. How could there be another Mirror Flower Heaven in the world? Unless Mirror Flower Heaven was reborn. But even if Mirror Flower Heaven was reborn, how could she only have this little bit of cultivation?" Sinful Girl held her abdomen, which was already dark red. Even though she was in pain, there was no expression of pain on her face. There was only indifference. He looked at the ancient sage who had made a move against him, as if he was looking at a dead man. It would have been fine if he had not attacked her, but since he had attacked her, even if she begged for mercy, Suyu would not have shown mercy. "Old Ancestor, what do we do now?" the female ancient sage asked. Old Ancestor Green Hat pondered for a moment. He stared at the evil girl and said in a deep voice, "No matter what, we will first imprison her and hand her over to the Stoneman Patrol team." The female ancient sage nodded in agreement. Yes, the old ancestor is right. It's best to leave such a mysterious person to the sacred mountain. She stared at the sinful girl, and a murderous aura emanated from her as she said, "If you know what's good for you, then obediently surrender. If you dare to resist, you'll suffer." As soon as he finished speaking, he took a step forward and attacked the sinful girl. The sinful lady did not try to avoid the female ancient sage's gaze. She could already predict what would happen next. As expected, just as the female ancient saint was about to grab sinful girl's shoulder, sinful girl Shun Qian's space suddenly tore open, and a fist came out of it, slapping the female ancient saint's palm. The latter felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Her whole body trembled, and she suddenly retreated. Her eyes were filled with surprise. Who is it? Her eyes were firmly fixed on the tear that had been torn open, and her heart was in turmoil. The secret space technique was not a big deal in the 9-star civilizations. As long as one had the scroll from the Space Saint clan, they could use it. What was strange was that the power contained in the other party's punch made the female ancient sage unable to ignore it. In that power, there was a sense of calmness and oppression. For a moment, she felt that she was going to be killed by the punch. Old Ancestor Green had also looked over and said lightly, "The master of the family has finally come out?" How could he not notice the message that the sinful girl had sent? If he wanted to stop it, how could he not? The reason why he let it go was that he had asked the sinful girl to find the leader of this group of mobs, so that they could get out of here as soon as possible. Otherwise, it would be useless to just talk to these minions. Creak. The tear expanded, and Suyu walked out of it with his hands behind his back. He was also wearing a black robe, and his face could not be seen clearly. "Are you all right?" He did not look at old Ancestor Green Hat and the others. Instead, he was concerned about the sinful girl's injury. The sinful girl shook her head. "It's just a superficial wound. It's not serious." Suyu looked at the bright red abdomen and silently withdrew his gaze. His eyes looked at old Ancestor Green Hat and the others, and said indifferently, "Tell me your name, so that when you die, you'll have a good name and become a lonely ghost." As soon as he said this, the other ancient sages laughed angrily. "Haha, what a savage thing. This is the first time in my life that I have seen someone who dares to speak to the Saint Clan like this." The female ancient sage could not help but laugh. She looked at Suyu and found that his cultivation was not very high. She really did not understand where he got the courage to say such arrogant words. Old Ancestor Green had also laughed at her words and said, "Take your people and leave immediately. This place is not yours to occupy. The real competitors should be the other two Saint clans, not the mobs in front of them." So he did not say a word. He raised his hand, and the great sickle of 10,000 calamities appeared in his palm. He had always been too lazy to talk to stubborn people. He instilled his strength into the great sickle of 10,000 calamities, and his eyes were cold. Then become a nameless ghost. Old Ancestor Green Hat looked at the sickle in Suyu's hand and could not help but be surprised. The super strong man that Qing Mu mentioned seemed to also use a sickle, didn't he? Could the two be the same person? However, this thought only flashed in his mind for a moment. How could they be the same person? With the strength of that super strong man, how could he be in cahoots with these triangular exchanges? At that level, if he were in the 9-star civilizations, would he not be a super giant? "If you want to die, I will fulfill your wish," Old Ancestor Green Hat said indifferently. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a terrified voice came from behind him. "Say, Senior." Qing Mu separated the crowd and came from behind, looking at Suyu with a pale face. It was not until Suyu took out the great sickle of 10,000 calamities that he recognized the identity of the black-robed man. It was the super strong man who had killed the two great saints of the famous Sword Saint clan. Hearing this, old Ancestor Green Hat and the other ancient sages all looked stiff, and they turned their eyes to Qing Mu with difficulty. In their eyes, there was a look of disbelief. It was not until Su Yu's reply that they felt they were lucky. "You are also from the Soul Wood Saint clan?" Su Yu naturally recognized Qing Mu, and he asked calmly. Qing Mu's eyes were filled with deep fear, and he hurriedly begged, "Senior, please have mercy on us. We didn't know you were here, and we didn't mean to offend you. Please have mercy on us." Chapter 2992. Is he really the super strong man that Qing Mu mentioned? It doesn't make sense at all. Why would such a super strong man be with such a motley crew? Su Yu's face was indifferent. "Show mercy? You came to my door and hurt my people. How do you expect me to show mercy?" Qing broke out in a cold sweat. How could he have known that Su Yu would arrive in advance? How could he have known that such a super strong man was the leader of a small, insignificant force? This pockmark was not a pockmark. It was a trap. He could not think of anything else, so he turned to look at the green-hat old ancestor. They were the ones who caused the trouble, so it was better for the elders to solve it themselves. The green-hat old ancestor's heart trembled as he looked at the giant sickle in Su Yu's hand. According to Qing Mu, this sickle was so powerful that it could suppress great saints. "My friend, we really did not mean to offend you. I hope you can make an exception." The green-hat old ancestor was much more polite. "How about this, my friend? Name a price, and we can discuss it." Name a price? In Su Yu's heart, the sinful woman was priceless. He looked at the female ancient saint and said calmly, "For Qing Mu's sake, I can let you go this time, but I have always been fair. Whoever gave my people a palm strike will have to take a palm strike from me. After this hit, the grudge will be cancelled, Suyu said. The green hat old ancestor's pupils shrank as he hurriedly said, "You can't do that." If Suyu's strength was really as Qingmu said, how could his people withstand the power of a hit from Suyu? Suyu raised the sickle and said, "Then, I'm sorry." He did not take the soul with Sacred Clan seriously. If he could kill the two great saints of the famous Sword Sacred Clan, why couldn't he kill the great saints of the soul with Sacred Clan? Wait, the female great saint said with a livid face. So what if I took a hit from you? There was not much fear in her eyes. Before seeing Suyu in person, she had indeed been in awe of the peerless man that Qingmu had mentioned. But now that she had seen him in person, she could clearly feel that Suyu's cultivation was quite weak, not higher than hers. How could a hit from him hurt her? Your courage is commendable. Suyu retrieved the great sickle of 10,000 tribulations and said, "I always keep my word. As long as you can bear it, I'll write it off." Seeing that Zhang Xian had retracted the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations, the female ancient sage felt even more reassured. Old Ancestor Green Hat hesitated for a moment, but he didn't stop the female ancient sage. Firstly, this matter needed to be resolved. Secondly, he had the same thought as the female ancient sage. It was really hard to believe that an ancient sage could kill two great sages of the famed Sword Sacred tribe. It sounded really inconceivable. It wasn't a bad thing for the people to probe Suyu's true strength. Only Qingmu hurriedly signaled to the elders with his eyes, as he wanted to stop her. After all, only he knew that Suyu's abilities and cultivation couldn't be judged by common sense. However, it was too late. The female ancient sage swiftly formed a series of hand seals, and boundless energy swirled around her to form a massive sphere. This energy shield was completely capable of withstanding an all-out attack from someone of the same level. Out of consideration for her safety, the female ancient sage also released her domain. It was a domain that was similar to a quagmire. As soon as it was released, it would form a quagmire with a radius of 3 zhang. When the energy entered the domain, it would be greatly mitigated by the quagmire. With the double protection, it was impossible for someone of the same level to cause any effective harm to her. This isn't a breach of contract, is it? The female ancient sage's eyes flashed. When she attacked the sinful lady just now, she didn't have enough time to prepare. If Suyu didn't allow it, it would be a little dangerous. Suyu crossed his arms in front of his chest and said calmly, "You can continue." The female ancient sage heaved a sigh of relief and said, "That's enough. Let's begin." She stood there and asked the people around her to leave. Old Ancestor Green Hat nodded and said, "Get out of my way." He had already made up his mind that if anything unexpected happened during the process, he would intervene in time to prevent her from being unavoidably hurt. Suyu lowered his arms and said, "Since you're ready, let me send you on your way." He released the space domain and appeared in front of the female ancient sage abruptly. Then, he struck her with his palm. The power of the heavenly law of the first level of the middle stage of the master of the heavenly law gathered in his palm and formed a palm of light. Seeing this, the female ancient sage almost burst out laughing. She had thought that Suyu was an ancient sage like her. But now, it seemed that he was a newcomer who had just broken through to the middle stage of the master of the heavenly law. He wasn't even an ancient sage. At this moment, she was completely relieved. She seriously doubted Qingmu's words. Even old Ancestor Green Hat and the others glanced at Suyu out of the corner of their eyes with a hint of cold, murderous intent. If what Qingmu said was wrong, today's matter wouldn't end so easily. Suyu's cultivation was indeed at the middle stage of the master of the heavenly law, and he had just broken through. However, apart from his cultivation, he also had an unparalleled body, the body of the emperor. Suyu's palm slapped down, and the realm of swamps immediately shattered when the palm slapped down, let alone obstructing Suyu's movements. Suyu's palm struck the energy shield on the surface of the female ancient sage's body without any hindrance. One could imagine what the result would be. Her energy shield was shattered on the spot. Everything happened too quickly, too unexpectedly, and too suddenly. By the time old Ancestor Green Hat reacted, it was already too late. Suyu's palm had landed on the female ancient sage's abdomen. With a dull thud, the female ancient sage didn't even have the time to show any signs of pain. Her body and soul were destroyed by Suyu's palm. Not even a mist of blood was left behind. All of her body turned into nothingness and drifted away without a trace. Suyu's figure stopped, and he silently withdrew his palm. He said coldly, "It seems that you couldn't withstand my palm strike." He looked at old Ancestor Green Hat and the others with cold eyes. "If you want revenge, you can come to me." Old Ancestor Green Hat came to his senses. He was naturally heartbroken, but he didn't dare to be angry. This was an agreement between the two parties. Life and death were up to the heavens, and no one else could be blamed for it. His people wanted to kill the sinful lady, and now she was returned with a palm strike. This was what she deserved. "My friend, you must be joking. We didn't mean that." Old Ancestor Green Hat suppressed the pain in his heart. Or rather, he was already numb to life and death. As a great saint, he had lived for a long time, and he had long been indifferent to the life and death of others. "I hope my friend will fulfill your promise just now, and all grudges will be written off." Old Ancestor Green had only hoped that Suyu would not go back on his word. Suyu walked towards his territory with his hands behind his back. "Of course, unless you come to provoke me again. We wouldn't dare." Old Ancestor Green Hat said sincerely as he watched Suyu enter. After Suyu, the sinful lady, and the others left, old Ancestor Green Hat also led the people of the Soul Wood Saint clan away with a heavy heart. "Old Ancestor, we made a mistake this time. Not only did we offend that super strong man, but we also lost an important member of our clan," one of the ancient sages said sadly. Old Ancestor Green Hat's expression was full of vicissitudes of life. "Now that things have come to this, resentment won't help. We'd better find a way to make up for it." He looked at Qing Mu and said, "In the future, you should spend more time at the Cauldron." "Yes, old Ancestor," Qing Mu said. After a pause, old Ancestor Green Hat's eyes flickered slightly. "In addition, today's incident will be strictly sealed. Even the fact that we came here will be kept a secret. Don't tell anyone." Everyone came back to their senses after thinking.